I'm on. Okay. This was, yes, stop your screen share. Let me
Where's the volume?
But I muted. These are just there.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 20 to 8 o'clock. Want to welcome everyone who's tuned in already. We have about 300 people busy watching us currently. And good evening to you all. Nice to see that you've all survived what appears to have been a few days of load shedding. So Adam Pantanowitz, I see you're on screen over there. Well, welcome. You have lots of generators and other things in your home. Tell us what you've done to protect against load shedding.
Thanks,
Good
Howie.
evening, everyone. The time is 20 to 8 o'clock.
Great to be with you, and thank you so much for having me. I want to tell you that I have installed solar power with an inverter and batteries into our house, and we have the whole system basically seamlessly switch over. So the only thing in the house that doesn't work during times of load shedding would be anything that heats or cools down the house, unless we very intentionally do that, because that obviously drains batteries very quickly. So we have this autonomous switchover. We can be unaware that load shedding has begun unless we get the Eskom to push notifications. And otherwise we just seamless. It's really, really cool.
Fantastic. Benji Porter, you have a similar setup, do you not?
Yeah, we've got a generator. It's not as green, which I respect Adam for that. But we've got a generator with a UPS on the key things. And when you've got a couple of teenagers and matric students, and the key things is Wi-Fi, so that when the generator, the small gap between the generator coming on and the lights going out, so that the Wi-Fi stays on. That's like. It's my most demanding job, is my RT manager at home. I'm the RT manager at home. The clients are relentlessly, the pursuit of excellence is just relentless.
But do you actually have in your home the same thing that I think everyone has, is no matter how bad you are on technology, you are still the RT manager for your parents?
Yeah. It was my crowning achievement, was getting my parents onto Zoom. I actually felt, I can't tell you, not getting married, not getting anything, not having children, anything, running a business, running comrades, was getting my parents onto Zoom was my crowning achievement in my life so far.
Gary, we're getting a little feedback, I think, from yours. I don't know if there's any way we can plug you into some headphones.
On it, Howie, on it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're a man of technology yourself. In fact, tell us about your dubious background in technology.
Let's get this running, Howie.
Okay. While you do that and get that running, Shani Krebs, welcome to you. Great to see you tonight. You're on mute, so let's unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I think we've got an amazing evening of storytelling ahead of us.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm really honored to be with such legends and guys who have overcome such great adversity.
So now we've got some fantastic story to tell. Now, you missed out on a big leap in technology while you were in prison. Have you caught up, or is it still something that doesn't come naturally to you?
So I had no idea about the Zoom and how to set it up, everything. I've got a laptop and I bought it about 2 years ago and it's still lying under my bed gathering dust. So tonight was the first time I've taken it out. But I get by with everything on my phone, I've got a smartphone, an iPhone, and it does the job pretty well.
That's all you need. In fact, the days of anything else are probably way behind us.
Yeah, so this is a first for me and I'm very excited.
Fantastic. Well, Gary Sweidan, you
How
tell
is
us.
this better? Is this sound better?
Much
good. Sound good, Gary. Could start singing even, eh? You're going to sing for us, Gary.
Yes, we won't scare everyone off then.
So, Gary, you're a technologist.
My wife tells me to sing on the inside.
Gary, you're a technologist. So, what have you wired up your home for load shedding with?
Howie, I have got a couple of UPSs installed as well. There is a generator, so yeah, I've left nothing to chance. So I've got a full DR plan here. because I have similar problems as Benji, and we're not going to take any chances.
No, it's demanding.
Your kids would never forgive you if you took any chances.
Disaster, exactly.
So the world is changing and changing rapidly, but Rail Lazaro, in fact, must have changed very dramatically for you this week, because first bar services, you were first on lockdown, we couldn't sell alcohol, and then they allowed you to sell alcohol, then they stopped you selling alcohol again, and then came, when was it, Sunday night, you could finally sell and start your business again.
Yeah. So actually from Tuesday, we were only allowed to start, well, we could start selling, but we couldn't deliver until Tuesday. But yeah, very interesting times, eh?
So Raul, tell us, you have a business that is around functions and events. You provide bars, you provide bar people and equipment, and you do major events, you provide alcohol to people. What happens to that business when lockdown began?
So, yeah, I mean, we went through quite a lot of changes. I mean, obviously, the night that Cyril had his speech and 2 weeks notice was given to everyone to do lockdown, every day for about 3 days, all of the events that we had planned for March were just being rubbed off the board. We've got about 100 full-time staff countrywide, over 500 part-time bartenders and runners, and literally everything just came to a standstill, which was quite devastating.
Your staff in particular must be in enormous difficulty over this period, because it's not like they could go find another job.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've tried to do what we can to look after the guys as well. Tours has helped a little bit. We've managed to team up with Feed SA in the beginning, who have raised a massive amount of funds. So what we did there is we packed food for the guys in our warehouse, and we made sure that, you know, we rotate the guys every day. They were packing food. Obviously, even though we're an events business, we're actually quite a heavily logistics business as well. So we've got, you know, buckies and trucks and massive warehouses. So we were able to, you know, to assist them, you know, for about a couple months doing that. And then also when lockdown was released the first time, one of our biggest suppliers was backlogged with thousands of orders, and we basically took half our office staff who obviously wasn't any events happening, so we put them into their warehouse, and a lot of our managers and bartenders and guys that are trained on technology, we put them in there as well to help relieve some pressure. And it was a great opportunity for them, and they were hired for like about 5 or 6 weeks. And it's just happened again now. The guys are backlogged and they need assistance. So we've managed to help out and help put some money into the guys' bank accounts and hopefully some food in their stomach. So,
well, I must tell everyone that together with Ricky Lyons, we run the Melrose North Can, and we've provided about 150,000 meals to the people of Kliptown. And when we've needed transportation, we have called up Thirst, and with no charge, with no questions, with no second doubt, Thirst has arrived at my home together with staff. We've piled tens of thousands of meals into their trucks, and they've shipped them at no cost to us into Kliptown. And I think when the people of Kliptown see a Thirst truck arriving, they understand what's about to arrive for them. It's not alcohol, because that's not important during lockdown. It's absolutely thousands and thousands of meals. And without you guys, we could never have, in fact, provided 150,000 meals to the people of Kliptown. So a huge thank you from all of those in the Melrose North, Birdhaven and Melrose area. You guys have been absolutely remarkable to us, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude.
Thanks, Howie. Actually, I mean, you know what? We're happy to help, and we appreciate you also knowing that you can count on us to deliver.
Well, we not only count on you there, Jewish Achiever Awards, you've been running the bars and the events at Jewish Achiever Awards also from many years. So we're so happy that you're back and that you're able to, in fact, participate again. Jewish Achiever Awards, of course, will be online and digital this year. We can't pack 1,000 people into the Stanton Convention Center this year, but we'll make a plan. And when we are back in a live event, you'll certainly be with us again.
100%. Thanks so much. Thanks for
Well
having me on
done,
the show, guys.
Amazing.
Well done. Well done.
No. So now, Gary, how have you coped during lockdown? And just before you answer that question, just to tell people that it's 10 to 8, we're welcoming so far. We've got about 600 people who've joined us early. We'll go live in about 12 minutes time. And we're just having an informal chat and catching up on people's lives and seeing how lockdown is treating them.
Howie.
Without taking away from rail or any of the hardships, but I saw this very funny tweet, and it said, would you like some red or white tea? A uniquely South African restaurant offering during lockdown.
Those are the real champions, the guys that have been keeping everyone teed up.
Would you like some tea with us?
You can let that ferment for long enough and you've got something valuable there, even during lockdown.
Sorry, carry on.
Nah, cool. So Howie, lockdown has been long. It started quite early for myself, and I must say it's been a long journey, but it's certainly, having had it in the early days of COVID, it's made it a lot less stressful now. So I'm still careful, but I don't think I'm as worried as obviously someone who hasn't had it. So yeah, it's a bit easier.
Let's actually run through that story. You came back from the United States. You're at a birthday party in the United States, and you arrived back in South Africa.
The soiree, Howie, the soiree. Yeah.
The soiree in Connecticut. And what date did you arrive back in South Africa?
It was the 9th. I stand to be corrected, but I think it was the 9th of March. It was
the 9th of March.
Yeah.
And when did you discover you had COVID?
Officially got the actual test back on the 11th of March. So it was, got back on the 9th, test on the 10th, result on the 11th. Yeah.
And you were really the first person that anyone really knew who had COVID.
It was certainly early days. Yeah, it was early days. It was fairly chaotic. It was people were obviously far more panicked then than they are now. There's obviously a lot more education about it now and so on. So yeah, it was a trying time. It was quite chaotic, I must say.
But you were very open and very public about it. You came and you told people, you went online, you posted on Facebook. This wasn't something that you tried to hide away. And because of that, we actually shut down the old age homes and things like that because of you very early on, because now we knew COVID was in South Africa, had reached our community, and if we didn't take action, we would be in trouble. So you are really almost patient zero that made everyone take precautions.
I think I refer to myself, I think, as probably P23, but maybe J0 or J1. Yeah.
The Maccabi Award.
Yeah, the Maccabi Award, exactly.
But Gary, what? You saved, I can tell you, you saved many people's lives. I know privately I've told you this, and publicly it's a great joy for me to tell you that.
No, thanks,
that you
Ben,
saved many people's lives because you were so open and honest. What gave you that strength? What was it? Did you just think, talk us through that?
Yeah, you know what, I kind of took the view that, you know, that the facts are the facts, and they are just that, and one cannot change them or hide them or sugarcoat them, and it was what it was. I think I I try to act in the most responsible way, and by staying away from it. And yeah, and also there was a lot of noise around it. Was, I think, shutting down would have just caused more chaos. So
Definitely.
I think for my family, for friends, and so on, just by being blatantly and honest about it, and honest about the facts of what they were, which again, as I say, couldn't change. And actually, and also a lot of people actually were actually ask. I mean, it's getting a lot of questions in various different forums, and yeah, I just thought, I suppose it's probably in everyone's best interest that this information does get out there, and I'd rather have it getting out there with the facts, and not people sort of making up a lot of. I mean, there still was a lot of that, a lot of people making up certain assumptions, a lot of assumptions along the way. But I think it was a vast majority. I think a lot of people were very scared, and rightly so. And yeah, it just kind of started spiraling from those first sort of posts, and they were well received, and we sort of continued. So hopefully it did a little bit of good along the way, and yeah.
So Gary, I'm sure you've heard this before, but you went on holiday to Thailand and there was a tsunami. You went on holiday to America and you contracted COVID as one of the first people in
Where are you
South
going
Africa.
next?
Yeah, where do we avoid
Tell us where
in
you're going
December?
next. I'm not going.
I did get a message upon getting COVID now, where a friend of mine messaged me, and she happened to, I'll talk about it just now, but she messaged me and said, it's time to cut up your passport. just
So-
call it a day. Finish. Cut it up.
So Wayne
Yeah.
Sussman, we're going to ask, welcome Wayne, nice to see you. We're going to be talking about a joint project that we're doing with Limut for Saturday night that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. But Wayne, you're also a COVID survivor.
Yeah, I don't have Gary's track record. I mean, Gary was the front page poster boy of the South African Jewish Report, but I think in Fulani, in the Vaal region, at my work, I was patient one. I was the second person, I think that's how it works, to contract it. So yeah, I'm following in Gary's footsteps, but I'm here to tell the tale, briefly. I'm not on the event tonight.
So you talk about Mfuleni, which many people would otherwise know as Vanderbijl Park. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And given the fact that you are patient one, which is the second patient, COVID patient, within your environment, how many patients have there now been within that environment?
So it's interesting. At the municipality, they've had about 11 deaths, and I think 200 people in the who work for the municipality, which is Vanderbijl Park, Vereeniging, have had COVID. That was about a week ago. I need to check on the dates. But yeah, it's definitely spread beyond the metro regions and is now in the outlying areas of Gauteng as well. You can definitely sense that. Just to tell you a pretty sad story, for the business I worked with, we handed over a lot of PPE to the Boipatong clinic, and the sister who welcomed us, who is really highly regarded in the Boipatong community, Sister Ntombeni, I learned today that she tragically passed away from COVID-19. And the day we passed it away, the day we handed over the PPE, was about 5 days before I tested positive for COVID-19. She was saying that no one in Boipatong and no one in the clinic and none of the healthcare practitioners there had got it. And I went back today, and today was the first day where about 80% of the staff was able to be there. But they had to shut down a lot of operations. So it's not just in the big city where COVID-19's hit, but also in the outlying areas.
Now, Wayne, we were talking about holidays, but people don't know your holidays are a little different to everyone else's holidays. Well, maybe Shani goes on holiday and he lands up in jail. Gary goes on holiday, lands up in a tsunami. But you go on holiday by driving from Little Karoo Dorp to Karoo Dorp. Just explain what happens inside that head, that a holiday for you means that you go meet the mayors and the members of the city council in the most obscure places in the Northern Cape, in the Karoo, in the Eastern Cape. Tell us about this weird fetish that you have with holidays.
So, look, as I said, I learn a lot from Gary Sweidan. It's not worth my interest to travel overseas. Look what's happening on my left. Look what happens to him when he travels. So I have this goal, this ambition to go to every single town in South Africa. I'm getting very close to ticking off about 3 of the provinces where I've been to every single town. It's difficult in a province like Limpopo because it's sparse and spread out, and there are a lot of small rural villages which are not on the map. But yeah, we typically always go on holiday in Cape Town with our dog, Billy Gandalfinger. And Billy Gandalfinger, it's very important for him to see every nook and cranny of the Karoo, every mountain pass, every mountain. And so my kids dread it. Billy Gandalfinger and my wife, I think, like it. And we're getting very close. So Howard, what I ultimately want to do, and I actually had a long meeting this past week, is to actually do a documentary called Tales from the Interior. It's very important to tell these stories in these rural towns, often where one cannot, where McDonald's and the KFC starting to arrive. In a lot of these places, there's still these old school pharmacists, these old school takeaway places, these old school general dealer stores. And it's my ambition in the next 12 months to start doing documentaries on some of these Northern Cape and Western Cape towns and tell these stories and find those interesting characters. It really brings the best out of me to meet these kings of their own small worlds.
But Wayne, we cannot let you get away without talking about the fact that your dog is called Billy Gandalfinger. How and does Billy Gandalfinger, the divorce lawyer, know that he has a dog named after him? And Adam Pantanowitz has posted in the chat, he wants to know if Billy Gandalfinger is 1 word or 2 words.
Billy Gandalfinger is 2 words. I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite, but I was overseas when my family decided to adopt the dog from the Boysons SPCA, and they named the dog Billy. And I came home and I said, A, I don't want a dog, and B, if we're going to keep a dog, he's not going to be called Billy. We're going to rename him formally and properly. And because we live in Norwood, we had to pay homage to the ultimate divorce lawyer in Johannesburg, a Norwood hometown hero, Billy Gandalfinger, and we renamed our dog Billy Gandalfinger. And wherever he goes, he charms a lot of hearts.
Wayne, you're absolutely insane, but we do want to tell everyone the time has just gone 2 minutes past 8. A huge welcome to everyone. I see we have about 1,700 people who've tuned in already to this webcast, and I'm sure we're going to fill up in the next 10 minutes. We've got an amazing, remarkable evening ahead of us. So for those of you who haven't yet seen, you'll see behind me is in fact the latest edition of the Jewish Report. Benji, have you gotten your copy of the Jewish Report yet?
I actually have. We were looking at it today. There's some brilliant articles all around. I mean, the UAE deal, which has been now negotiated, is just part of it. It's just an amazing. It's like the PETA just astounds us every week, right, Howie?
Absolutely. So if you want a hard copy of the Jewish Report, go to your local Spar, your Woolworths, your Pick and Pay, your Norwood hypermarket, your Dis-Chem. Go collect a copy of the Jewish Report newspaper, or alternatively, you can go online to www.sajr.co.za. That obviously stands for the South African Jewish Report. So www.sajr.co.za. And you can either download the entire edition of the Jewish Report, or you can read each individual article online as well. If you live in a block of flats or townhouse complex, chances are we've actually delivered a copy of the Jewish Report through to you as well. So go down to your security guard or your entrance and ask for a copy of the Jewish Report. We are currently being read in hard copy by about 34,000 people every week. We also have about another 30,000 unique people who go onto our website every week and either download the edition or read the various copies. And of course, we distribute our newsletter to approximately 25,000 people every week as well. So we cover the entire Jewish community. We have journalists in Cape Town. We cover Durban, Port Elizabeth, Johannesburg, East London, Pretoria, and you name it, Durban, we're there. And talking about we're there, we'd love to know where you are. So please use the chat functionality, say good evening to all of us, let us know where you are in the world. We know the people in Cape Town are absolutely freezing because they've told us a little in the chat. We know the people in Sandton are really, really cold. We know the people in Tel Aviv are sweltering. But please, in the chat that you have, please let us know where you are in this evening. And I see we have people in Washington, we've got people in Alberton and Orange Grove, and we even have people watching from Leeds, people in Cape Town, coming in from all over the world. So please let us know where you are. We love to see whether you're watching on Zoom or watching on YouTube. We love to see where in the world you actually are. Another bit of information is that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Jewish Achiever Awards nominations close. So if you have not yet nominated people for Jewish Achiever Awards, please, it's absolutely essential that you do so before 5 p.m. tomorrow. That deadline is immutable. We do not change it for everyone. And every year someone calls on the Sunday night or the Monday and says, oh, please just do me a favor and allow me to nominate someone. Well, the answer is no. You have till 5 o'clock tomorrow, and that's when nominations close. And you can nominate people for one of our 9 categories by going on to www.jaa2020.co.za. So that's www.jaa2020.co.za, and that obviously stands for Jewish Achiever Awards 2020.co.za. And please go and nominate people, whether it's lifetime achievement or humanitarian or community service or entrepreneur or art, sports, science and culture, or we've done humanitarian or business icon or professional leader during COVID or business leader during COVID. Now is your opportunity to absolutely go and nominate people for the Jewish Achiever Awards. And with that, we want to thank Danny Kadar. Danny, turn on your camera for a second. Let's say good evening to you. Danny's on control this evening. Nice to see you, Danny. Thank you for doing everything that you do. And we look forward to a great evening ahead of us of some remarkable storytelling tonight. So Danny, thank you so much. We'll see you a little later. And then Wayne Sussman, we have a remarkable evening planned for Saturday night. So we are doing on Saturday night, it's a joint Jewish Report event with Limud, and we are doing 12 remarkable speakers in one single evening. Tell us how this is going to work.
Howard, it's a real privilege to collaborate with the South African Jewish Report. Your webinars have been absolutely incredible. So on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, you'll get the registration information. Tomorrow you'll be able to register and meet the first 5 presenters with Howard Sackstein and I. You'll have a choice of 5 different sessions. So in hour 1, you'll be able to listen to someone like Miri Eisen, a former advisor to the Israeli prime ministers, a colonel, a person who has often been seen on television speaking about the United Arab Emirates Peace Accord and what's happened in the Middle East in 2020. If that's something which doesn't speak to you, you can listen to Ruta Vanagaiti, a Lithuanian journalist who will be speaking about the destruction of the Jewish community in Lithuania during the Holocaust and how 96% of that community was wiped out, and we know how many of our Jews in South Africa have links to Lithuania. We'll have someone remarkable. When we think of Mallorca, we think of Rafael Nadal. Well, Danny Rothstein, the head of the Mallorcan Jewish community, will be telling the story of the secret Jews, people who had to practice Catholicism for many, many years, but try to hold on to their Jewish identity. It's an incredible story, and many of them are now returning to their Jewish tradition and faith. He'll be speaking about that. We have numerous other sessions online, including someone called Tembekile Molawutsi, who was sentenced to life imprisonment for a crime he didn't commit. He'll be speaking with Carolyn Raffaeli, a journalist. So we have a whole host of array of topics. There's a lot of unrest and turmoil in Belarus right now. One of the speakers will be the leader of the Belarus Jewish community, speaking about the rich Jewish history of that community, but also what it's like being a Jew in that community right now, and what it's like living as a citizen in the last dictatorship of Europe. Leonard Cohen and Limud go hand in hand, and I'm sure that there are many Leonard Cohen fans on this call, on this webinar tonight. And I think this explains the beauty of Limud in a nutshell. We have someone from Belgrade, Serbia, called Sonja Vilicic, speaking to a South African audience on Saturday night about someone from Montreal called Leonard Cohen and how his music influenced the world. So it is going to be a whole host and array of topics. In hour one, you'll have 5 choices. You'll get the unique Zoom links after you hear Howard and I introduce the different guests. And in hour 2, there'll be a short break. And in the next hour, you'll get another 5 choices as well. One of the other remarkable sessions is sitting very near where that first film studio was in Johannesburg, is a Johannesburg Jewish businessman called Isidor Schlesinger. Don't know if you've heard the name. Well, he's the gentleman who brought films and bubble gum to South Africa. He was one of South Africa's most successful Jewish businessmen, and not many people in our community know about him. So this is one of the many incredible sessions which will be available on Saturday night, Howard.
Wayne, so tell me, I'm going to tell you which ones I'm going to watch, and you tell me which ones you're going to watch. In the first hour, I'm going to watch Mary Eisen. So former colonel in the Israeli Defense Force, spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force, and advisor to the Prime Minister. And she's going to be talking about the United Arab Emirates deal with Israel and how the Middle East has changed as a result of that. That's my choice for session number 1. For session number 2, I don't think you actually mentioned him, but there is a story called The SS Officer's Armchair. And it is a book that's just been written, a true story about a kid who's sitting on an armchair. Something feels wrong in the cushions. He says to his mother, we must fix the chair. They take the chair to the upholsterer, and the upholsterer finds that the grandfather was an SS officer and has hidden his diaries in the armchair. And that's going to be one of the most remarkable stories you will ever hear. That's what I'm going to watch in session number 2. Wayne, what are you going to watch?
Yeah, just Howard, that's an exclusive. That book's being brought out by Penguin Random House. I'm privy to a lot of the organization, a lot of the book dealers, etc., booksellers, major organizations want that launch, want that debut, but that book launch for South Africa, not just the South African Jewish community, is going to be live on the South African Jewish Report Limud webinar, the SS Officer's Armchair. So that is going to be a great session. In the first hour, I'm going to go to a young, inspiring guy called Menachem Bombach, who's an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jew who grew up in Mea Shearim and has still very strong links to the Hasidic community. But he is very concerned about his community not having the practical skills to compete in the business world. And he teaches them, he runs programs, and he's been recognized across Israel for this remarkable work, where they can still study in a yeshiva, but also learn incredible practical skills. So that's what I'm going to go to. And in session 2, it's really difficult, that Daniel Lee session you just mentioned, or I love Leonard Cohen, I might want to relax, or I might also go listen to Belarus, because I don't think we've had much opportunities. So that's the beauty of Limud, Howard. You can decide one thing, and then at the 11th hour decide to go to something else. So the one thing I'm going to say, which is going to be difficult on Saturday night, is that choice can be agonizing. There's a lot of great presenters, a lot of great sessions on offer, and it's going to be a remarkable evening, and we're looking forward to this collaboration.
Fantastic. Wayne, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to Saturday night. Danny has posted in the chat right now. If you want to go register, the link is in the chat. It's a bit.ly link, SAJR Web 47. Go register. We'll also be sending out notifications of that to everyone tomorrow. So, Wayne, a huge thank you to you. We'll see you Wayne. On Saturday evening.
Thank you.
So, Benji, tonight, we in fact launch an amazing competition because it is Rosh Chodesh Elul tonight. Which means the Jewish month changes and we are in the month of Elul, and that is the month of the Jewish New Year. And one of the traditions of the month of Elul is that we blow the shofar every single day. Why on earth do we do that, Benji?
Look, you're putting me on the spot here. So
you're my halachic advisor.
I always told you about this, that you've got to choose your friends a bit better. But one of the reasons is to prepare us for the upcoming holy days and the Rosh Hashanah that's coming up. And it's a slow preparation to remind us that this great day, the day of judgment, is coming. So that's one of the deep reasons. The other reason is so that the person who blows the shofar can practice.
So Benji, what we are doing tonight, we are in fact launching a competition. We want to find the best shofar blower in all of South Africa.
Yeah, but it's a wasted competition, Howie.
You know, you say this.
I know the best shofar blower. It's Gary Sweidan. Have you ever heard him blow the shofar?
Benji and I actually bet a bottle of whiskey today on who was going to win this competition for being the best shofar blower. We're on very different sides, but tonight we launched the competition and we have our first entrant. Now we want anyone who has a shofar or can blow the shofar to in fact record a version of themselves blowing the shofar. We want a tekiah, a shfarim, a trua, and a tekiah gedola.
Exactly.
Done on your iPhone, not in portrait mode, in landscape mode, please. And we want you to email a copy of a video of you blowing the shofar into our competition. The email address is webinars@shusreport.co.za. Danny's going to post it in the chat. But in the interim, Justin Joffe is in fact our first contestant, and we want to show you, in fact, Justin Joffe's attempt. So webinars at shusreport.co. Please, we would love you to participate. Go record yourself, in fact, blowing one of the 4 notes that we bring out of the shofar, and let us, in fact, have a competition. We want to find the best shofar blower in all of South Africa. So please go practice, send us a video, and every webinar we'll be showing some of the entrants that we have in our shofar blowing competition. Just a very quick reminder to people that you can chat along as we speak. There's a chat button that takes place, or that's at the bottom of your screen. And there's also a Q&A button. So at any point in time, you can in fact ask any questions to any of the people that we're going to be chatting to this evening, but we'll only be looking at either the Q&A section or alternatively, the comments on YouTube. So that's where you put anything that you'd like to ask any of the people. And with that, we would like to thank Thirst. We were chatting a little earlier to Rael Lazaro about this. We'd like to thank Thirst for their sponsorship. Alcohol is now legal in South Africa, and we certainly hope that people will support Thirst the way Thirst has supported our community over the last few months. Alcohol is back. We're not there yet, but the good times will return. So why not get whatever you need from Thirst's online store? The best thing about it, instead of schlepping to the shops, you'll receive delivery within 24 hours. Get your orders in fast, because who knows when the next ban is coming. Details in the chat. And the best thing yet, now that events are open up to 50 people, take advantage of Thirst 50% off bar hire for your wedding, birthday, bar mitzvah, or next celebrations. Details in the chat. So a huge thank you to Thirst, and Danny will be sticking into the chat right now where you can access, where you can order Thirst alcohol from, as well as if you are having a function where you can get a 50% discount for your next function on Thirst bar services.
Howie, don't you think, sorry to interrupt, but don't you think it's amazing to have Thirst sponsoring this? And we hear about the good that they do and the choices that they made during a time where they could have felt that everything was lost. But then still they decided to do good and to re-energize their own businesses. I find it remarkable. I really do. And just well done to that entire team. It's an amazing thing that at the time that you were so under pressure that you still went and helped the Melrose initiatives. And I've heard other stuff that you've done.
And
it's just well done.
as well. Just remarkable people making
remarkable stuff.
Absolutely. So this evening, we're actually talking to 3 remarkable people, and we're going to be hearing some amazing stories of resilience, stories of overcoming great tragedy, stories of perseverance like people have never heard before. And we want to welcome, first of all, Shani Krebs. Welcome. Fantastic to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Great, thank you. So Shani, we're going to just ask a few questions, but we'd love you to tell us your story. And maybe we start, you're a graduate of King David Victory Park, is that correct?
That's correct. Not a very good example.
I think we probably all think that of the schools we went to. And you grew up in Arcadia?
That's correct. I matriculated at King David and then left Arcadia to go to the army in 77, sorry.
And what sort of kid were you?
I was a wild kid, naughty, always defied authority, but also I was a good sportsman. So a lot of my life revolved around rugby, football, and obviously art. I excelled at art from a very young age.
And at a fairly young age as well, you started experimenting with drugs.
No, well, I mean, I started experimenting in matric, so I was 18 years old, and it was basically marijuana. It was only later on in life that I started experimenting with heavier drugs.
And like, which drugs were you involved with?
So initially, as I said, it was marijuana, and then I started smoking mandrax. Don't know if you remember the mandrax scene, and then took LSD and eventually got hooked on cocaine, and then freebased, which was like a form of smoking crack cocaine.
And what was your life like when you were doing that? Were you functional? Were you going to work? What were you doing?
No, I worked, but I got fired from almost every job, you know, so, but I was still responsible because I had to like take care of myself. But what happened was, because I had a habit, I started dealing drugs to support that habit. So, and then I was running around crazy, you know, so eventually it just spiraled out of control. So life became quite meaningless for me. I was just chasing a high all the time. But I did go through phases where I stopped and cleaned up my act, like maybe for a year, and then I would relapse. So it was a vicious circle.
And how did you land up in Thailand?
So one of the guys who I was dealing with and supplying me with cocaine started taking the coke, started going to Thailand. And at that time, it was called China White, which was a form of heroin and became quite popular in America. And he started taking it through to New York. And he kept on saying to me, you know, like, let's do something together. And my attitude at that time was that heroin was a bad luck drug and it kills people. And I really didn't want to get involved in it. But then my addiction got so bad that eventually I said to him, okay, I'm happy to do a run. Let's do this, you know.
So what was the plan? How was it going to work?
So the plan was that I'd go over there anyway. So I went with the money, and they set up the deal from South Africa. And I met with the Thai drug dealers, and they handed over the stuff to me. I gave them an envelope. We actually met in the stairway of a hotel, in the fire escape, you know. So it was quite funny because we had to have passwords. This guy didn't speak English, I didn't speak Thai, and I mean, he looked like this funky dude with these glasses. I mean, I still remember he looked a bit like Elvis, you know. So, and he didn't actually have the drugs with him, but in his hands. So when I handed it over, then I said, like, where are the drugs? You know, he said, just wait 3 minutes and walk up one flight. He said, like, go up, like, you know, I must wait. Anyway, he disappeared. I went there, and there were the drugs right there.
So like,
it
what was the plan? Like, someone's given you a whole bunch of drugs. Like, what do you do with it then?
So I sit with it, and in my book I've called it the bomb. I mean, this was like a bomb, you know, it's 2.4 kilos of heroin. So I kept it in my hotel room, but what I did was in the bathroom, I opened the ceiling and I hid it in the ceiling while I was there. And then the plan was to bring it back, but not to South Africa. I was flying to another country where I would meet up with somebody else, pass it on to them, and then I was going to come home.
Did you think there was a chance you would get caught, or did it not cross your mind?
You know, I'd got away with so much all my life. I thought there was no chance I was going to get caught, you know. I even remember when I was at the airport, I kind of said a little prayer to Hashem. I said, just let me get through and close the eyes of the authority, and I'll stop dealing drugs. I'll stop. Because I mean, you know, at that stage I was so involved, and it was, I had such a bad feeling all the time. So when initially I didn't think I'd get caught, but once I had the drugs, and then when I was trying to leave, I had this terrible feeling in my gut that something was going to go down wrong.
So like, how long were you actually in Thailand for? Was it just kind of handing over the money, picking up the drugs and flying out? Or?
I was there for like 9 days or so, you know, so I tried to look like a tourist. I went to nightclubs, even got into a fight in a nightclub. I partied. I went to some tourist attractions. I bought gifts. So it looked very normal. So I thought, but they were monitoring me from the time I arrived.
Shani, give us a kind of feel for what's the street value of that kind of drugs? What were you dealing with?
So at that time, I think it was about $90,000 US, you know, because it was pure. I mean, it was 99% pure.
And was that your motivate? Just wanted to make loot. You just needed the money.
I just wanted money to get high, basically. And
also, so how much would you have earned from that?
So I would have made myself about $15,000 in those days.
And so now it comes time, you want to leave the country, you have to fly out, you arrive at the airport, and what happens to you?
So anyway, I stuck my bags through the X-ray machines and that was all good. And then I went to the departure lounge, and you know, the first thing that I noticed was there were no other passengers. So I started already getting a little bit nervous. And I went and handed in my passport, and the teller who took it couldn't look me in the eye. And then through the corner of my eye, I saw these like a SWAT team commandos on walkie-talkies. And before I knew it, I was surrounded. They had machine guns. I had a 9mm pointed at my head, and they pointed directly to the bag that contained the drugs and asked me if this belonged to me. I mean, which was kind of quite funny. And I still nervously made a joke and said, well, hello. I mean, I'm the only person around here, you know. They didn't find that funny at all, and grabbed the bag and said, and like escorted me to an interrogation room where the contents of the bag, which was like a briefcase, had been emptied, and they took out a Stanley knife, cut it open, pulled out the drugs, weighed it, tested it, and it weighed in at 2.4, and it was pure China white. And then, yeah, sorry.
Were you set up? I mean, were they waiting for you? Is there something that happened at the airport?
So later on, I kind of discovered sort of what might have happened. There are two possible scenarios. So at the time, I think still today, America has been fighting the war on drugs since the Vietnam War, which a large percentage of the world's heroin is produced on the Golden Triangle, which is Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. So the year that I was caught, there were probably about 13 South Africans caught. There were at least 26 Americans caught. A whole lot of bunch of Nigerians that were caught, and from several other countries. So to me, what could have happened was that America had put the pressure on Thailand to start showing numbers of foreign arrests, because they were still having a problem in America with heroin. So the Thai police work hand in hand with the drug dealers. So they went to them and said, listen, you got to give us names, otherwise we're going to close you down. I mean, it was millions and millions of dollars, because everybody was being caught. it didn't matter where you put it, you were being caught. So that's one possible scenario. And then the other one is that, which I doubt, is that I could have been like a decoy. So what they do is they rat you out anyway, and then they send their own guys, maybe a couple of guys on different flights on the same day. So the Thai Drug Enforcement Agency is waiting for you or me, and then other people are going through. So those are the two possible scenarios, but definitely set up.
So you get caught, Shani, and they take you, what, in the airport, or where were you taken then?
So I was taken to like an interrogation room. I was also then questioned by the DEA, and they let in the media there. Before I knew it, we were surrounded by media. And then I was taken to a police station. It's called Rajada Police Station. There I was thrown in a cell with probably about 16 other drug offenders, where we were held and interrogated. I mean, some of the guys there, especially like the Asian guys, they actually tortured them into signing a confession by hanging them from the ceiling, tying them up and stripping them naked, and made them stand on ice and then attached electrodes to their testicles. I was very fortunate in that I was just hit with like a telephone book on the head, so it wasn't as bad, but they could see they weren't going to get anything out of me. So I didn't rat anybody out, you know. So I
What's
just
the
said,
point of the media? What did you think that why they brought the media in? Just to show that they're winning the war?
So the thing is, besides winning the war as well, the Thais love locking up foreigners because it gives them diplomatic leverage over those countries. You know, because you've got an embassy, so there's a certain protocol where like the South African embassy or any other country's embassy has to visit the prisoners at least once a month.
So who's the first one you called? Do you call the South African embassy? Do you call your family in South Africa? Who do you tell?
You know, in those days, there weren't cell phones or anything. So I'm asking to contact the South African embassy. So while I was downstairs in the police cells, I noticed some girls there sitting like next to the cell. They were also arrested. So I asked them, like, where are you from? So they said they're from the South African embassy. I'd already asked, they're from South Africa. So I said, well, have you seen the embassy or anything? They said, no, we don't have an embassy here. That's what the police told them. And I said to them, no, it's ridiculous. Of course we have an embassy. And I demanded to see the embassy. And eventually they came, like the next day. So I contacted them, you know, so, and my family had also contacted the embassy, or I think it was Foreign Affairs, wanting to know where I was. And they said, well, haven't you seen the front page of the newspaper? Your brother's been caught smuggling drugs.
And what was going through your head at this point in time? Did you think, like, I've had it, there's a death penalty in Thailand for drug trafficking, is there not?
So I mean, I pleaded innocent now. I said I didn't know I was carrying drugs, and I was under the impression that I was smuggling forged foreign currency, mainly being dollars. So I'm sticking to my story, thinking because I was set up, maybe I could get benefit of the doubt and everything. So I'm still thinking maybe I can get bail. Also, I've got no idea how the judiciary works. And then when I speak to the embassy, they said, look, we can't interfere in anything, and you actually go into prison because drug offenders don't get bail, you know, and the chances are you might even get the death penalty. So I'm still thinking at this stage, well, maybe there's a chance that I can get off. But I mean, obviously now I can't sleep. I'm waltzing around in the cell. I'm walking up and down, and I'm also trying to prepare myself for the worst. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to prison. So I start exercising, I start doing push-ups, but at the same time, I keep thinking, like, how did I get here? I mean, if I think about my life and coming from King David and playing, I mean, I was a brilliant footballer. My dream was to play in the Premier League. And how did I get involved in drugs? And I kept on going back to that first joint that I smoked. You know, so my whole life starts reflecting, my whole life flashes past me. I'm worried and I'm scared. I mean, it's a nightmare. I don't speak the language. I don't understand the culture. And I mean, it's almost like I was on another planet.
Shani, I'm sorry if this is too personal, and
I'm
interested what your relationships were like at that, when you phoned home or when you contacted or anything like that. What were your relationships like?
So the thing is that I do have a history of drug addiction of 16 years, building up my life, losing everything, my family always coming to my rescue. But the thing was, I never really involved my family in my drugs, or I never took anything from my family. So we always had a very loving relationship. My sister, she was more like my mother, always coming to rescue me. But at some stage, they were also getting to a point where they were saying that, because just prior to going to Bangkok, I had 2 seizures. I was involved in an attempted murder where I shot a cop by mistake. And they had reached a stage where they said, well, listen, I mean, if you continue with drugs, we don't want anything to do with you, because they could see that it's going to end badly for me. I'm either going to die or I'm going to land up in prison. So my relationship was good with my family.
So you're in prison, and you take us through after you try to have this alibi that it wasn't, that you didn't have drugs. What happened next?
Okay, so I stayed in the police cells for 9 days, and then we were taken to court. We arrived, we were taken under armed guards. So they took quite a few of us, and more people were coming in. We arrived in court, which was, we were put in these cages with hundreds of other prisoners. And I sat there we arrived there early in the morning at 9, and I think I went into the court at 2 o'clock. I hadn't had anything to eat. We drank water. And I assume what was a mere formality, because I had to sign a couple of papers. And then we were taken in these armed prison vehicles, which were completely closed off, packed in there, like to capacity. I mean, you could hardly move. And we were taken to a prison called Bombard prison, where most of the drug offenders are held. Now, Bombard was designed during the Second World War. It's a very primitive prison. We arrived there, and we go inside. I had a little bit of luggage, because at the police station, they just allowed us a few things to take to the prison. And actually, they stole most of my stuff. There, we were lined up. There were about 60 of us, and we were stripped naked. And there were like 3 guards on these garden chairs, and they had these latex rubber gloves on. And we had to march past in single file and bend over, and they stuck their finger up your rectum looking for drugs. You know, so I mean, I just couldn't believe what was happening, and it was my turn, and I objected. I put my hands in the air, and I said to the guy, I mean, he didn't understand English. I just went, no, I'm not bending. I just said, that's it. I'm not going to do it. And he got all excited, and then grabbed a baton and was telling me to bend. And fortunately, at that moment, a higher authority came past and wanted to know what the commotion was about. Anyway, they exchanged a few words, and then they said to me, okay, I don't need to bend, you know, so I could just go on. So I kind of understood also then that as a foreigner, that I would have some sort of leverage over the authority. And then once that was done, they cut our jeans. We were allowed to just keep a change of clothing. There again, they put our stuff in storage and just our toiletries. And then we were shackled. We went to a section where they put chains on our legs with these steel rings. You put your leg in a vice, and they closed it on. And then some guy came with a 10-pound hammer and knocked these things that they were almost touching your ankles. I was then thrown into a cell. There were 60 of us. There may be 50 guys. We were about 110 guys in a cell, which was maybe 8 meters by 7 or something, with 1 toilet. So, I mean, it was so overcrowded that you couldn't actually, not everybody could sleep. So the guys slept in shifts. Some would stand, some would sleep, some would sit. And then the next morning when we woke up, we were given a medical examination, which basically consisted of them sticking a spatula down your throat, checked your eyes out, wanted to know if you had any tattoos or any other deformities. And then we were put in different buildings, that group. But we were fed, the food arrived. And I remember they came in these huge steel pots. And I don't know if maybe Gary's familiar with the dry fish. It's almost like a delicacy for them, but it smelled terrible. and this red rice. I mean, I hadn't slept for I don't know how many days. I thought the rice was moving. There were weevils in it or something. But anyway, then we were taken to different buildings and thrown in.
Shani, how long until you appeared in court?
So then it's a process, you know. So I think my first court appearance was maybe about 12 days later. So you had to go to court every 12 days, 9 times. So in my first appearance, I pleaded innocent, and then came back. We went to the courts, came back to the prison, and one of the Thais, who was also a prisoner, was actually lived in America, and he was caught with cocaine and spoke perfect English. And he came to me and he said to me, like, you know, what happened? What happened? You know, and I said, I pleaded guilty. He said, I mean, innocent. He says, you're crazy. He said, the Thai judiciary is very different to Western countries. Yeah, if you plead innocent, it's almost like an insult to the king, and you're going to get the death penalty anyway, and you'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars fighting your case, and you'll still get the death penalty. So if I were you, I would change my plea. And luckily for him, because in my next court appearance, I pleaded guilty. And then from there, they appointed a government lawyer. So there was, I was expected to get a lower sentence. So
but Shani, there have been South Africans who've in fact been executed for drug trafficking in Thailand.
I don't think so, you know. So I don't know where you got that information from, because
I may be incorrect.
Generally the Thais, now it's probably Bali and Singapore and those countries, but Thailand generally doesn't execute foreigners, Western foreigners, but they do execute Asian foreigners, like from Burma. You know, so some of the really big drug dealers and some of the murderers, you know. So, I mean, a lot of guys were executed while I was there, but never in the time, the 18 years that I was there a foreigner executed.
So at your trial now, you've pled guilty. They sentence you to death and then commuted to life.
Yeah.
What goes through your head at a moment like that?
So the thing was that the South African embassy were visiting us on a monthly basis, and they said to me, look, don't worry, we're in the process of signing a treaty. So other countries like European Union countries and America who have a prisoner transfer treaty with Thailand, if you have life, then you only serve 8 to 10 years. If you have a number under life, like 33 or less, you serve 4 years and then you transfer to your country. So already there was a little bit of hope, you know. And my sister had come to my court case. She was absolutely devastated. So I had to put up like a brave front. So just to calm her down, I said, look, don't worry, I'm sure South Africa will sign a treaty. And I mean, I'm going to do 8 to 10 years. It can't be that bad.
And so now you're sentenced to life, you're sentenced to death, you commuted to life, you go to jail. What is it like in a Thai jail?
Okay, so just to mention that life's 100 years. So I'm sitting there with a 100-year sentence. So, you know, the conditions are very primitive. It's overcrowded. And because of that, diseases are rampant. They had open sewage systems. I mean, I've never seen such skin diseases in my life. Guys had like these big lumps, rashes all over their bodies. You in a cell, you're sleeping shoulder to shoulder. You're locked up 16 to 18 hours a day. They give you 1 meal a day. So it's really tough. There isn't even clean running water. When I was finally sentenced and taken to the maximum security prison, the water we showered from was pumped in from the river. And they had these huge horse trots, and like 500 guys would shower at once. So it's really tough and it's really hard, and you don't speak the language, you know, so it's kind of really hard.
Is it violent?
Well, Bangkok is rated, if you can even Google it, as one of 10 most violent prisons in the world. So I don't know what it is, but Thais don't value life like Western cultures, you know, so they believe in reincarnation. But there were a lot of murder cases. I was actually in the murder building. So, you know, it's prison. So there's a certain degree of honor in prison. And if you break the code and you get involved in the drugs and that, you expose yourself to being killed or to killing someone.
Did you have access to drugs then? Were you still addicted?
So in my first year, I did smoke a bit of hash. There was a lot of heroin. Heroin's never been my choice of drugs, but I could have gone down that path. And my cell, most of the guys had heroin on them all the time. They were shooting it up, sniffing it. But I knew, you know, when I was sentenced to life, that the thing was I was there because of drugs. And if I carried on using drugs in prison, I knew I would never get out alive. But the thing was as well that you needed money to survive. And my sister went out to get a job so she could send me money so I could get decent food. You know, for the first 4 years, I only had one decent meal a day. So I couldn't exactly take that money and squander it. So I think my main motivation to stop drugs then was my family. You know, so I stopped everything actually, it was the 13th of November, 1995. Today, I'm 24 years drug-free.
Shani, you mentioned when you were at the airport and you almost have a discussion with God, with Hashem, and like, please let them not see what's in my suitcase. Like, tell us about your relationship with God.
So, you know, being in Arcadia and that, and at King David, I also went to Ben Akiva camp. So I come from a very spiritual background. And there was a stage in my life, especially after my bar mitzvah, where I wore my yarmulke all the time. I wore my tzitzit, and we went to shul 3 times a day. In my final years at Arcadia, I was head boy, and I was also the chazan, and I used to take the service. So, and then later on in life, especially during my drug binges, all the fights I had, shootings, whatever, it always seemed like I had these guardian angels. And I've always been a firm believer and had great faith in Hashem and believed that I was being protected. So I try to take advantage of that. And so, I mean, I would have made any deal with God. And I actually meant it, you know, that like because I had this terrible feeling and I just thought, okay, I can't do this anymore. You know, I've got to stop. And I thought if I asked God to close their eyes, I'm going to get through. And then it went through the X-ray machine, so without anything being detected. So I'm thinking, okay, one more step to go. And then, you know, funny enough, I think I had to get caught, because if I hadn't have been caught, I probably wouldn't be alive today.
You describe yourself, I mean, it's beautiful, and you describe yourself as a spiritual person. How did that manifest? Did you find yourself manifesting? How did that manifest once you were in prison? You knew you had a certain length of service. You knew this was your new reality. So
in the beginning, I mean, especially when I was caught in those first few days, I didn't, my faith was really being questioned. I thought, no, there can't be a God. I mean, why would he want to subject me to such extreme levels of suffering? And then as time started going by, I started going through this process of rediscovering who I was. And then so many miracles were transpiring in my life, in prison, through my art, and just by the way I was evolving as a person. Because actually, it was something Viktor Frankl wrote, which has always stuck with me, that everything can be taken away from man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, is that ability to choose one's attitude in a given set of circumstances and to choose one's own way. And I'd been lost most of my life. And yeah, I had this opportunity, and I knew that I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice to either clean up my act and do good time, or I could do bad time. So then my faith started becoming renewed. One of my friends in London, her name's Edna, she started writing to me and then started sending me some books on Judaism. And she also sent me a Siddur. So these books were piling up, and they were there. And I kept on every day, I would see them. And then in 1999, I was involved in a fight and thrown into solitary confinement. And I took the Siddur with me and some of the books on Judaism. It was the Mayim Lawyers anthology, and there was a book from Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, Bringing Heaven to Earth. And slowly I started reading those, and then I understood that actually Hashem was saving my life. And through my art, I found meaning and purpose, and my faith just kept on getting stronger and stronger. And I knew I had to be there. I knew that I was being saved from myself.
Shani, there's a question from Ben. He wants to know, did you daven in shul, and did the Thais let you actually...
Oh, in prison.
In sorry, in prison. Easier to daven in prison today than it is in a shul, that's for sure. But did the Thais let you be Jewish in prison, and could you daven?
Yeah, so listen, I mean, they are, because I mean, it's from the United Nations minimum requirements for prisoners. So all prisoners are allowed to practice their religion. So Jews weren't actually allocated an area to pray. So initially I started davening in solitary confinement. I woke up every morning just as the sun was rising, and I would start davening Shacharis, and then Mincha and Ma'ariv. So I started praying, but praying on my mat, you know, and then I just felt so comfortable in that space. Like even in the cells, when I came out of solitary, I couldn't really stand and daven, because then I'd be in the way of the guys that watch the TV. I didn't want to disturb anybody. So I just found such peace, even saying the Amidah, sitting with my legs crossed. So I davened from about 1999 till the end of my days in prison. And then the last 2 years, I managed to get some tefillin. So I used to put on tefillin. And there was a stage where I acquired a studio. So you could buy what we called houses, but everything cost money in prison. And there were quite a few Jewish guys and Israeli guys, and we'd often get together and daven there. And I still put some concrete, and I put a Magen David in it, which was like, I scratched it in, which was like our ark, you know, we'd face north. So yeah, and we'd go through some of the anthologies and debate some of the, the Jewish philosophies. So yes, I did daven.
So by the way you're talking, Shani, it seems almost like you miss it. It's almost you're like looking back on good times, reminiscing about it. There's no sense of hurt or bitterness in the way you're talking.
So you know what? The fact is that it saved my life, you know, and if today I've sold pieces of art all over the world, I'm teaching art, you know, I'm mentoring recovering drug addicts. I've developed a 4-step drug recovery program. So through what I've been, you know, my whole purpose in life today is to make a difference to others, you know, and by sharing my story. I mean, I was just counting today, I was going through all the schools I've done talks at. There's maybe about 25, 30 schools that I've been to. And you know, if I can just help one kid stay on the right path, then that for me is one of the most beautiful things.
It's beautiful. Take us back. Just how are you out? If you had a 100-year sentence, maybe just take us through that quickly.
Okay, so in 1990, so I was arrested in 1994, 26th of April, one day before the first democratic election in South Africa. And in 1996, the King of Thailand celebrated his 50th anniversary to the throne. You know, I'm going to just go through this quickly because it's quite a long story. I don't know how much time we've got, but a new government came into power and they were taking a stronger stance on drug offenders. Now, whenever the king had a big occasion, he would grant amnesty to prisoners. So this government now was taking a stronger stance and saying that drug offenders weren't going to be included. So I wrote letters to every single human rights organizations in the world. I mean, I even wrote to the Pope, I wrote to the Queen of England, I wrote to Bishop Tutu, I wrote to Nelson Mandela, I wrote to Bill Clinton. We wrote to everyone. And firstly, I was calling on the Thai government to abolish the death penalty, which I knew they wouldn't. And then secondly, I was saying that we didn't want to be discriminated against. We wanted equal treatment, equal for all offenders. Anyway, cut a long story short, when the amnesty came up, drug offenders were included, and my sentence went from 100 to 40 years after being there for 2 years. And I'm thinking, gee, this is a miracle. You know, maybe I'll do 10 years. And then over the next, so over the next, all the years, whenever there was a royal occasion, drug offenders were included as well. But we got less of a cut than the murderers. Like the murderers got a half cut, and drug offenders would get like a 1/8 or a 1/9, and depending on your class. So my sentence after that went from 40 to 36 to 33 to 27, right down till about, I was on 21 years and 7 months, which was in 2011. And then in 2000, that year, the king was celebrating his 7th cycle birthday, which means every 12 years he celebrates it, making him 84, which was a big occasion. But the thing was that the king was sick at the time. And if he died, which would mean they would mourn him for another year, we wouldn't have got the amnesty. And now I'm praying for this king, so asking God just to keep him alive, at least till after his birthday. And we did get that amnesty. And if you do the mathematics, we got a 1/6 reduction. Then I'd been there 17 years something, and my sentence was down to 21 years, and I had 6 months left.
So, Shani, we're going to come back to you towards the end, but one last question before we move over to our second story, and then we'll reconnect with you towards the end of the Zoom, and people will be able to chat with you. But you came back to South Africa after 18 years. How have people reacted to you when they've met you? Have you been able to fully integrate back into society? What's people's approach and attitude towards you today?
So listen, I understood also that when I came out that there'd be a mixed reaction. I mean, some people were saying that I should have been executed, and why did they let me out? I was a drug dealer, I was destroying people's lives. But I must say that generally the Jewish, especially the Jewish community, were very welcoming. And also the fact is that I did turn my life around. You know, I started producing these beautiful art pieces. I started opening galleries. I was doing exhibitions. I was doing motivational talks at schools. So I basically had a second chance in life. So I'd earned that respect and that forgiveness from people. So I was very welcomed, and a lot of people recognized me from the newspapers on the streets. And it was actually, I mean, my life since coming out it's been incredible, but it's also been hard to integrate. I mean, I've had a lot of issues when I came out. You know, I had a lot of anger. We had a lot of problems at home with my family. I mean, I wasn't normal, and I was quite aggressive as well, you know. So I'm still adjusting. So it's a long process. You know, you don't do 18 years in prison and come out a normal person. But I've employed some of the same survival mechanisms in prison in the free world. I mean, coming back here, I'll read your letter that I wrote when I came home. I was scared. It was a nightmare coming home, you know. So it's been tough.
So, Shani, we can never do your full story justice in such a short period of time, but you've written a book.
That's correct. It's called Dragons and Butterflies.
So where can people find a copy of this book? Is it available on Kindle? Where can people get hold if they want to read your...
That's the book. It is available on a Kindle, and it's an ebook, and I sell them as well. So you can contact me on Facebook, or you can email me at Shani Krebs Hotmail, and I'm happy to deliver a signed copy to you. Exclusive books can also give it to you. So sometimes they've got in stock, but you know, the book was published in 2015. So, but I'm still selling books.
So what I'm going to do is ask Danny Kadar to put the name of the books, which is Dragons and Butterflies, into the chat, as well as just give us an email address that people can contact you on if they want to buy a copy of the book from you, or alternatively, they could get it downloaded for their Kindle as well. But your email address is?
ShaniKrebs@hotmail.com.
ShaniKrebs@hotmail.com. Danny, if you could just put that email address together with the name of the book into the chat section, please. And then, Shani, we'll come back and chat a little more later on. But before we go on to our second remarkable story of the evening, we'd like to thank BPO for sponsoring yet another one of these amazing webinars. And let's hear from them quickly. Capability BPO offers a diverse set of BPO services to private and public sector clients, both to domestic and international markets. Debt-In is a private professional services business that specializes in debt recovery and credit control solutions to public and private institutions, operating its own specialist debt collection contact center and creating unique strategies for its clients in order to significantly improve their collection results. Contact Mark Essie, the CEO, who will assist with solutions tailor-made to your specific business requirements, bringing the expertise of his team to your back office. Well, Benji, that's quite a story, hey?
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable, and the triumph of the human spirit that he paints and pulled his life together. It's really remarkable, Shani.
Absolutely.
Quite an honor to hear it, eh?
Now, Gary Sweidan, we started in Thailand, and we're going to continue in Thailand.
There's a theme here. There's a theme.
There's a theme. That's a good segue. You went on holiday to Thailand. It's December 2004. There are many, many South Africans who go to Thailand every December. You there with friends. Tell us your story.
So Howie, the story actually starts a little bit earlier. It starts in September of that year, which is when I got married on the 9th of September. And we decided to push out our honeymoon through to December instead of going away after the wedding. So this was actually the honeymoon. We were going to Thailand. Ilana and I had holidayed there many times before, and it was a firm favorite spot of ours. And we're actually heading to Bali afterwards. That was the intention, at least. So we jetted off to Thailand on honeymoon. We I can't remember exactly where we were first, but we essentially landed up on the island of Koh Phi Phi, which just in terms of its geography, which is important, is a very, very small island. It's essentially 1 kilometer long and approximately 400 meters wide, and it has the bodies of water on both sides of it. And it's essentially got hills on either side, and it's this flat piece of ground or land in between that's become over the years a very popular holiday destination. It's got a couple of mainly sort of bungalows on the beach. Well, the whole thing's almost the beach, but there's basically bungalows, and there's the odd hotel, brick structure at least. And yeah, it's a great place. It's beautiful,
paradise.
Beautiful place.
It's paradise.
It is paradise. It's where the beach, the famous movie The Beach, was filmed with Leonardo DiCaprio. That's just right there. And yeah, it truly is paradise. And it actually this was on the 25th of December. It was 2004. We went on a day trip, on a boat trip for the day, where you go to the different parts of the island, and essentially there where they filmed the beach, and you go snorkeling and you spend the day out, and it's actually pertinent to the story. We spent the whole day out, and we got home that evening. We came in quite late from the day. We were with some people we knew. We were with some friends, and we were with some strangers on the day of that boat trip. Anyway, the day ended. We got in quite late, and we decided to actually have a relatively early evening for what had been going on. Most nights had been quite late ones, and there was lots of restaurants and bars, and it's quite a festive island. Anyway, we turned it in early, and which was actually so we woke up early on the 26th relative to the other days where we had been accustomed to sleeping in. Nonetheless, we got up, and we went to down for breakfast. Well, we were staying in a bungalow on the beach. We must have been about 10-15 meters from the water at a resort there. We got up, we went for breakfast. We went to go meet some friends of ours for breakfast, and normal morning, a very typical morning there. Had some brekkie, and we went. What happened after that was the guys we were having breakfast with. That was the late Avadia Berman and Nikki. They went off to the swimming pool. We said, "Listen, we'll see you a little bit later. We'll meet you at the pool." And Ilana actually said, my wife said, she's going to go and phone her brother. So she quite liked walking around the town, and she decided instead of using the cell phone, she'll walk into the village and go and call her brother who was overseas I think in the States at the time. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to go back to the room, and I'll wait for you in the room. And when you finish, we'll head to the pool together. So I was lying on the bed, just watching some TV, I recall. And at that time, I started seeing some water coming like underneath the floorboard almost. Anyway, I didn't think too much of it. I kind of got up quite relaxed and walked over and had a look around, and still didn't think too much of it. Anyway, I started lifting various items off the floor so they wouldn't get wet. So I picked up my shoes and I picked up the suit. Anyway, the water started getting a lot harder. Started coming in significantly. Couple of seconds or minutes later, I'm not even exactly sure of the time frame. But then the water started raging, and the bungalow actually had these glass doors which faced the ocean, and the water started raging to such a degree that it actually smashed the window. So this time I kind of knew, like, all right, well, something's obviously seriously wrong here. I still had no idea what was going on, but I went into the opposite side of the bungalow, which was the bathroom, and I jumped up on the vanity on the basin, and it was almost like a skylight, if I could call it, like a plastic ceiling or a skylight to some regard. And I remember standing on there, and I remember like pushing up, thinking, like I'm gonna get on the ceiling of this. The water was raging underneath me, and at that time the bungalow just absolutely got obliterated and collapsed around me. So at that point, I recall being washed around in the water, and it felt like a bit of a washing machine. And it was just pitch black under the water. And however, I don't know how or what, but a couple of seconds, a minute later, I managed get my head above water, and I found myself at that point grabbing onto a tree, and I recall myself now sort of bear hugging a tree while this water now is just raging past me with everything raging along with it. It was just chaos. So I hung on to that tree for a while, and until the water sort of calmed down to some regard. It didn't subside, but it stopped raging. And again, I don't really know how long that was, but it was a couple of minutes. And I remember holding on the tree, and that I remember at that time, I looked to my right, and there was some Thai woman also like holding on to some structure as well. And I actually just remember like looking at each other. There was like this blank stare of both of like, what's just happened here? And we still have no idea. I didn't even know what a tsunami was at the time. I don't think I'd even heard of one. And at that point, the water had stopped raging, and I realized like I don't know, I have to do something. I have to go somewhere. I have to do something. Anyway, I made my way off this tree and sort of.
Sorry, Gary,
hobbled.
Were you injured yet at that time?
Yeah. So at that time, I from sort of holding around the tree, I'd got significant amount of lacerations on my arm and my legs. Although my legs I actually hadn't noticed yet, but my arm, and it was actually there was some flesh and stuff hanging from my arm, and I actually recall I actually took my shirt off and I wrapped it around my arm because there was like stuff falling off my arm, some flesh and skin and whatever. So I was but I didn't. The adrenaline was firing. I mean, I I was in absolute shock, and I didn't really feel the pain per se. And I sort of waded along through the water and over these structures, and I made my way up to the side of this building, the structure. It was a brick structure. Wasn't so high, but there was quite a lot of rubble around. So you managed to hop on this rubble, and I made my way up the side. And this lady, a young British lady, and her boyfriend at the time, they were in the inside of the structure, and they sort of pulled me up the side of the building and helped me into this room and put me on a bed, and quickly realized there that I had some fairly significant lacerations all over my body, and my legs were pretty chopped up, and my arms. Anyway, they started sort of tending to my wounds. They grabbed like bed sheets, and they were tearing bed sheets to tie it around. We were holed up in this room for a short while, where there was a huge amount of panic and pandemonium and chaos, and just a bit of screaming. And anyway, the consensus was that this building that we were holed up in was not sufficient enough protection, because there was just absolute panic that there's going to be another wave, another one's coming, and if one does, that this is not going to hold up. So these guys helped me, and we carried me and hobbled me along, and we made our way to another building that was almost next door, but it was one of a more significant solid structure. It was about four stories high, I think, roughly. It was quite a solid hotel, one of the few that existed in PP at the time. And we got into this hotel. We made our way up the stairs to as high as we could go. I can't remember which floor it was, 2 or 3 or whatever it was. And we just went into somebody's room. They put me on this bed, and this couple, they sort of looked after me, throughout the day. So the big problem now was the constant thought I had that I was now, what's happened to my wife? What's happened to Lana? I'm thinking, she hasn't made it through this. So there's quite a lot of panic about that. I recall one of the thoughts always through the first couple of hours was, how am I going to tell her father that she hasn't made it through this? So that was quite a rough time. So I was lying on this. I was holed up in this room. There was this British couple that looked after me. They were amazing. And there was one or two other guys. There was an Israeli guy in the room and another British guy, and it was just, there was just a lot of sitting around, and there were a lot of people coming in and out of the room the whole day, just like looking for a lot of people. There was just generally people were looking for other people. That was the constant thing. They would stick their head in, and have you seen this one? Have you seen that one? And that went on for a while. And what actually happened was exactly that. One of the guys from that boat trip I mentioned from the 25th, he stuck his head in. This was a couple of hours after that, and he said, Gary, I said, it's Greg, and he asked me, he says, do you know where my wife is? And I actually said the same thing to him, and he actually said, no, I've seen Ilana, I've seen your wife. So that was a massive relief, and he went off now to go and find Ilana. She was holed up in another area of the hotel. She had been in the reception of the hotel when the wave had hit, and she was being looked after there by another group. They were all together, and he went to go and find her, and he then brought her back to the room where we reconnected, and thank God. So that was a huge relief at the time. After that, there was another guy that actually that arrived in the room as well, where he was looking for his mate at the time, and connected with that other British guy in the room by the name of Paul, and they were looking for their friend. But at that time, this guy looked at me, and there was a consensus. This was quite a lot later in the day, and the consensus from everyone in the room was this: and they need to get me off this island. I wasn't in good shape. I'd lost a fair amount of blood, and at this time, there was a helicopter that was coming in and out of the island, which we we could see from where we were. So the guys, all these guys basically decided, right, they're gonna get me off. They need to get me off this island. So they got a bed sheet. They put me in this bed sheet, and everyone grabbed. They mustered up a group of people, and they all carried me down to where the helicopter was ferrying people on and off the island. And I'll never forget this. So we get down to the helicopter, and the guy doing the triage there, he was a French guy. He looked at me. He said, "Yeah, no, it's quick on. Your next one. You need to get out of here." So they put me on a Huey. It was an army chopper. Huey looked like a sort of a war scene, and they sort of lay me down on the back floor. Thing was packed, and at that point they said no, because then Ilana, my missus, she's coming with me. We're going together. The pilot's going, no. The guys are saying, no ways, you're not getting on this chopper, and this guy. So that was that was quite a blow. I'm thinking, what's going to happen now, and what's going to happen to my wife. And the guy we were with, the guy that arrived in the afternoon looking for his mate, he looks at me and he says, "What's your name?" And I tell him my name, and he says, "My name's John Cohen. Does that mean anything to you?" And I said, "No, that means a lot." He says, "I promise you, I'm going to look after your wife. Don't worry. Go. We'll find you. We'll connect in the next day or whatever the case may be. But you need to get out of here." Anyway, we put me on the chopper, and off we took off. But when I landed, we actually landed in Krabi, and when we landed there, actually Lana was on the chopper. I think she had basically read the riot act to the guys running the show there, and there was no way she was staying. There was absolutely no ways, and thank God for that, because she looked after me, and we got into Krabi, was taken into a clinic there. And it was absolute chaos. There were people on fields. They were lining corridors. It was quite a rudimentary clinic. And anyway, they got me in there on a stretcher, and the guys going. Ilana was running around the hospital trying to get someone to try and do something for me. It was again chaos. And at the time, there's this guy walks up to Ilana and says who are you? What's your name? You can hear her speaking, and of course he was another gentleman from the northern suburbs of Joburg, and he was a chap by the name of Andrew Brown, which I'll come back to as well in a while, because it's the story comes back to him. But he then also just helped his wife was also very badly injured. And the long and the short of it is they said, "No, listen, we can't help you here. We're going to, they put me in an ambulance, me and her, and they sent me off to another hospital in a town called Sweidan. It was about a 2-hour drive in the ambulance, where they gave me, I think, a bit of some painkillers and sent me on our way. And I remember that drive well, because I think every single bump we went over, I just remember the grimacing pain of this journey. Anyway, we got into this next hospital, which was now quite a significant town, quite a significant hospital, very, very large hospital, and got in there as well. And then I remember they took me through to wherever the emergency room or the ward, and likewise, they quickly decided, no, they're gonna shoot me off to the operating theatre there to do some work on me. And I don't know if some people watching may have seen the movie The Impossible, and there's a scene there which was identical to the experience I had, which was I'm lying on a gurney outside this operating room, and basically they open the doors and they wheel someone out and they wheel me straight in, and I'm thinking to myself, but aren't they going to clean up here? Never mind, there's thousands of people. It was chaos. They were just doing whatever. But I actually recall there when the general anesthetic kicked in, it was a huge relief of that pain throughout the day, because this was quite late in the evening already. This was probably 10, 11, 12 at night must have been that it took to get from the day through to this point. And I was laid up in this hospital for the next day and the next night, and there was a ward for men only and a separate ward for women. Ilana was in another ward, and they brought her down, I remember, in a wheelchair to come and visit me the next day. What had actually happened, I remiss on one thing. Earlier on the day, we had managed to get one SMS through to our family, which was basically read, "Alive but hurt." And that was the only communication we managed to get through at that time. We didn't have any other. So that following day, we're trying to get figuring out how we can actually get in touch with our family now. We need to get out of this place. And I recall Ilana commandeered the only phone I think that was in the hospital. It was a cordless phone, and basically she hung on to it, and God forbid if anyone else needed that phone, they had problems because we weren't letting it go. And somehow, I can't remember, she managed to get hold of someone on another island, and eventually contact was made with the family in South Africa, and all things sort of swung into gear, and for them to get us from there. We managed to get from there through to the following day. We were airlifted back to Bangkok, which was quite an amazing hospital, and the gang was looked after very well there. I've spoken before. The Chabad rabbi there, Rabbi Kantor, sprung straight into action to come and make sure we were fed. We had some other South Africans that heard we were in hospital there and just arrived, and just amazing people that just came to help. We were there in Bangkok.
So Gary, just before you go on, there are 230,000 people who died that day, including some of our friends, Vadia Berman, Nikki Leibovitz, Paul Sender. When did you know that they were dead?
So I spoke about the helicopter when I was taken to the helicopter site for me to get off the island. We arrived there, and at the same site at the same time was the late Paul's girlfriend at the time, Gabby, and we saw Gabby there, and she said, we said, "Where's Paul? Where's Paul?" And she said, I recall, she said, "Paul's gone." And and we said, no, we'll find him, and she basically said, "No, like, Paul's gone." So at that point, we knew we'd heard, Gabby told us about Paul. We had no idea anything whatsoever about Avadia and Nikki at the time. We had no idea. We hadn't. No one had seen them. No one. Yeah, we probably when we got into the hospital in Bangkok and got a TV, got in front of CNN at the time, did we actually realize what had happened. First of all, on the day, we thought that this was just something that happened in PP. Then when we get to the next hospital, we realized, okay, it was something a little bit bigger, in Thailand of sorts. Only did we actually realize, when we had seen the news that following 48 hours later, did we actually know the enormity of what had happened. And then likewise, at that same time, we were getting a lot of phone calls from the guys now that were starting to look for, trying to find Avadia and Nikki and try and piece the pieces together, where they were, what had happened, when they'd last been seen, and so on. So yeah, sort of only then did we really know what had happened.
Yeah, so you're in the hospital in Bangkok. The rabbi's looking after you. How did you get out?
Yeah, so what happened then? So essentially, at that time, we were in extensive contact with the family. My folks actually at the time also they made a quick trip over, so they came out to Bangkok quickly. And basically, I have to say at that time, Discovery was working very closely with all the authorities and so on to basically figure out how to get us out. And what happened then, they organized a flight. There was a flight that was chartered, which basically took home about, I think, 10 or 11 South Africans on this flight, which left, if I stand to be corrected, I think it was on the 1st of January actually at the time. So it was about 4 or 5 days later. And they chartered, they sent on that flight, there was a doctor and a few nurses, and they basically rounded up the injured at the time. And on the first year, we got on at the time, which was Mark Shuttleworth's Global Express plane. It was quite a journey home. And we got airlifted. We got airlifted home. I think we arrived on the 1st or 2nd of Jan, and landed up in hospital here for a couple of weeks. Battled with some severe sort of nerve damage. Had quite a few skin grafts. It went on for quite a while. It was a trying couple of months while we during the recovery phase.
Yeah, physically it must have been trying, but mentally it must have taken enormous toll. Maybe talk us through some of those challenges and some of those thoughts.
Yeah, it was, Benj, the size of it and the impact it had, I think, on the world was quite a lot to take in. The trauma, losing friends, being injured, being in the middle of this, we had a lot of thought of, why us? How come, how did we manage to get out of this?
Yeah.
There was a bit of guilt. I was severely depressed for a while. I was physically quite injured, which then led to depression. I was absolutely miserable as anything for quite a while. We did have some counseling at the time, which helped a lot. We did engage with other guys. I spoke about Andrew and Gabby and the guys that were involved, and we did a bit of counseling together, and we spoke a little bit together. I think that helped quite a lot. Had a super powerful support system through the family and friends, which was amazing. At the time, also my colleagues and the people I was working with and for were also very supportive, and so that all helped a lot. But it took a long time. The pain, I suffered with this pain syndrome through it, and that kept me down because I just couldn't get rid of this pain. Eventually I landed up, I found these guys that ran a thing called the pain clinic, and they did a couple of unique kind of treatments on me, which eventually came right. And I think once that came right was the sort of the beginning. But this was it was a process of most of the year. I mean, pretty much 2005 was an absolute write-off. We were newly married. This was meant to be fun, This was, you were moving into our first home, and here we are. We were holed up. We actually had moved in with my folks for a little while for them to help with us, looking after us. And there's my wife. She's looking after me. I was pretty useless at the time. So it certainly wasn't what we had planned for the beginning part of our marriage, but I think it made us pretty strong and pretty resilient.
Gary, I remember coming to visit you in hospital, and your legs were shredded.
Yeah, I recall how that's.
In fact, you may recall there was another young couple who were on PP Island who were swept straight over the entire island, who were there at the time. But I thought you would never walk. I thought you would never walk again. And in truth, you are an athlete. You've been to Everest Base Camp. You've hiked.
I haven't been to Everest Base Camp, but I do intend going to Everest Base Camp.
Okay.
But you do pick up on something, Howie, and it is something else I did want to talk about, because it's kind of the story is exactly does sort of start in 2004, but it kind of culminates in 2007, 2016, and so in 2007, what had happened? So 2005, I recovered. 2006, anyway. 2007, a colleague of mine at work basically says to me, well, I want to go back one step. In hospital, at the time you were talking about, at some stage in 2005, one of the doctors says, well, listen, there's a good chance you'll never run a marathon. And I kind of said, well, I was never going to run one anyway, so it's really not a problem, and it's nothing. That's fine. That's fine, But we'll come back to that. But in 2007, my colleague said, listen, we're going up Kilimanjaro. We're taking a group of people there, and I wanted to come back. And I said, there's no ways. I mean, at this point in my life, I was still limping. I was battling along. I still had, I battled. I still don't have perfect movement there, but I was certainly not in any peak condition, and did harbor an injury. Anyway, they convinced me to come along. And in 2007, I did summit Mount Kilimanjaro, and that was absolutely a turning point in the culmination of this whole journey of going there. It definitely changed my life. The getting up that mountain, it was tough. It was getting down took me triple the time to anyone else. I really battled physically. But it taught me, that's, if I could do that, then it's, there's not much we can't do. It was a great lesson for me. And then to your point, I think in 2016, I did my first marathon, and that was also I think a real closing of the loop of the story. And because when I did finish it, I did recall that day in hospital when the doc said, you probably won't do one. And I thought, okay, well, here we go. So yeah, it was a great way to sort of close the chapters to some regard.
Gary, we're going to come back to Gary in a few minutes' time after we've spoken to Adam. One last question just before we give you a little break, and that is, a few people have asked, did you ever reconnect with the British couple who looked after you?
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so I did. I very much did. We straight after, a couple of months after the tsunami happened, and we were back here, I actually went back and I made a trip to the UK, where we threw a little bash for them, and we had got together with all of our mates in the UK. Subsequently, me and Ilana, we went to this lady's wedding, and so we went to a wedding, and the other guys, John and the other guy, Paul Simmons and John Cohen, likewise, I actually still stay in touch with today every now and then, and we all do still stay in touch, and they still quite very, very special people that we have a unique relationship.
Remarkable.
Gary, we're going to come back to you in a few minutes. I'm so traumatized. I feel like we need a little break. Yeah. And want to thank Mantis. Mantis, once again, they've sponsored so many of our webinars, and they really are the premier security company in Gauteng and maybe in South Africa in its entirety. To Mantis, a huge thank you for your support, and let's have a word from Mantis. Wow, Benj, what a story, hey?
You know, I was last year, we were in PP Island, and I cannot imagine how they actually survived, because it's such a small island, and it's to have that level of wave and that level of, I know Gary's a remarkable guy, and yeah, it was absolutely gripping.
Did you go to the memorial on the island that
Yeah.
memorializes those who perished
Yeah,
on PP?
yeah.
So many South Africans, so many members of our own community.
Yeah. And just Gary's openness and authenticity, and just it's just remarkable, absolutely remarkable, and actually very inspiring, because I know what his life's like now and how and what he's doing with it. So it's something
Truly
special, Gary.
Truly remarkable. Now, Adam Pantanowitz, listening to that story, when Gary said the doctor said to him, "You'll never run a marathon," that must have in some way resonated with you, because the doctor said to you, chances are you would never ever walk again.
That's right, Howie. And I mean, what remarkable stories, as you guys are saying. These are seriously moving stories that I've heard from the guys. And I think for me, it was definitely a resonating statement. That statement was a big reminder to me of that feeling of what it's like to have someone who certainly has authority in these matters tell you something about your future. And for me, this was quite a long time ago in my life. This was when I was 13 and 14 years old, and I was hearing this from quite a few doctors at that time. And what was really happening in my life is that I was going through a process of surgeries to correct some leg abnormalities, really. And at the time, these surgeries were important in my life. I had been earlier in my life unable to walk. So actually what Shani was saying about football really also resonated with me. I wasn't nearly as good as it sounds he was, but I absolutely loved football, and I grew up playing sports, and sports were really my life. I was on the football field. I used to play soccer, I used to play cricket, whatever I could really get my hands on, literally. And at a point in time when I was in about grade 7 or standard 5, I started to progressively lose the ability to walk. Prior to that, I used to walk up on my toes. So it was a bit unusual, and people would often comment about it when I was young. I used to walk on my toes, and there was a need to correct this because I started to progressively get worse. And I recall a holiday that we went off to, and I was carried from the car into the place where we were going for holiday. And I had a first computer there, and I spent those few days on a computer. We actually took the computer with. I didn't go out of the place, and I got carried back, and my ankles were just not coping. I was unable to walk at that time, and my parents decided that surgery was really the only option as a way forward. And going through that process with the doctors, to your point, I was told a few times that I would likely or possibly never walk again.
And I mean, that's a horrendous thing. You're a youngster. You think you'll never walk again. How does it affect you emotionally? How does it affect your outlook on the world?
Well, I was absolutely devastated, frightened about the prospect of having these surgeries. And I went through the surgery. The surgery didn't go well, unfortunately, for me. It was quite a bad outcome. The surgery was partially a botched surgery, to be honest. And at the end of the surgery process, I was put into bed, and I was unable to walk for about 6 months when I was totally immobilized. I was in full casts all the way up to, from my toes to my hips, and I just couldn't move. I couldn't put my legs down. I started to develop pretty bad pain, a pain condition that actually never would leave me. And the pain was getting progressively worse. So instead of starting to heal, it was getting a lot worse. And all of this was going on during my adolescence. So I was taken out of school. I was about 14 years old at the time. So I just started at a new school. It was King David Victory Park. And halfway through my grade 8 year, I was basically immediately stopped school, and I missed grade 8. Going into grade 9, that was the start of my recovery. I would move into a wheelchair. I would later move onto crutches, and I would start to mobilize through a lot of effort and physiotherapy, but I was not recovered. In fact, my injuries had persisted. They hadn't gotten better. and I was just working around them. I was just kind of coping. And what actually happened in the subsequent years is I ended up missing a great deal of school. I estimate that I missed 70 to 80% of high school. Grade 11, I was completely taken out for that year. And the following year, after that grade 11 year, I actually came back into grade 11. The school had decided that there was no way that I could progress. And we ended up doing this very creative deal. Actually, it was Joseph Gerassi at the time who did an amazing deal for me that I didn't realize or really appreciate truly at the time. And that was to restructure my matric year to be over 2 years. So I could still be with my peers that had kind of now moved past me. And I felt this great sense of social detachment. I was losing friends. I didn't really have continuity. I would kind of, ninja bomb into the school and then disappear. And there was no continuity of relationships and friendships. I was like socially just pretty much full-time removed, and I would appear for a few subjects here and there when I could.
Were you on pain medication as well?
Yeah, and in fact, how we spent quite a lot of time. I mean, my mom used to take me to, we must have seen into the hundreds of medical practitioners of all kinds, doctors, alternative practitioners, anything you can imagine. We tried because we were trying to find a solution. We were trying to even find a diagnosis. There was so much uncertainty about what was actually going on with me. And to distill that out, I was on all sorts of medicines as a result of that, and partially as a result of that uncertainty. And I was on medicines for years, I think until grade 11. I think in my second year, I decided at home that I would go cold turkey. I was on morphine at home, and I decided to take myself off it. And, my mom often recounts that I went through a full drug withdrawal. In the nights, I would, be sweating. I would go through this drug withdrawal, but I just decided that the state of constant mental kind of cloudiness was not good for me anymore, and it wasn't something that I wanted to persist. So I was on a lot of drugs, and getting myself off of those drugs was one of the best things that I could have ever done. It was perhaps one of my inflection points in my life. I continued to have lots of pain and lots of complexity in my life. I was obviously very down. I was detached. I was removed from my social development. And I was, most of all, not really, progressing in school and not really progressing in life. And I think my parents had a huge anxiety about what was I going to ultimately do and become for my work. I remember a conversation that I accidentally overheard where my dad was saying, but he can't even stand for 5 minutes. How could he possibly fulfill any profession? And this was actually a truth. This was a reality.
So here you are, you're probably destined to be in a wheelchair. You're probably destined to never finish school, but you take yourself off, your own decision to take yourself off the pain medication and to try clear your head. What was that moment of clarity when you made that decision?
I actually remember writing an English essay, and I couldn't get my mind to work in the way that I wanted it to. I was trying to articulate something, and in my mind, I had a sense of what I wanted to put onto the page, but there was a complete inability, a complete murkiness of my mind to be able to extract the information in a coherent way. And I became so despondent and so frustrated with that cloudiness in that moment that I said, this isn't for me. And there was another component to it, is that part of me was starting to enjoy that cloudiness. And I just thought, this isn't the kind of life that I wanted to live. So I decided from that moment, I would not take painkillers for this condition, for this problem, for this pain any further. And I was done with it. So that was actually a big turning point for me.
And did you finish matric?
So I did. Through this restructure, I did manage to finish matric. I didn't do exceptionally well in matric. I did well enough to get myself into university. And I was really and truly directionless. So I got through matric. I still, until about 4 years ago, I think it was, I have these these nightmares that I'm trying to rush to get to my matric exams. but I'm at a later point in my life and I'm trying to get to these matric exams and balance like what's going on in life. And it's surely a legacy psychologically of that concept that I might not persist through school, you know. But I did manage to get through school and I matriculated. And after doing so, I found myself at Wits University applying for a BA, a BCom, and a BSc, directionless. And wandering around during orientation week, I came across this thing called engineering on the advice of a friend. And I was completely unaware of what engineering was about. But on the advice of another friend, I was persistent about trying to get in. And I sat in the faculty.
Because you didn't have the marks to get into engineering.
So it turns out I had the very minimum marks to get into engineering. I had the very minimum marks. I got, you know, just enough marks. So the marks wasn't a true barrier, but they told me no at every corner. They said, first of all, it's orientation week already. People are already registered. They told me they were 3 times oversubscribed for the programs I was trying to get into. And about 3 days into that week of persistence, they phoned me and said, well, you can't get into electrical engineering, but we have this program called biomedical engineering. It's new, and we might be able to create a place for you, but you have to let us know by tomorrow. So I jump on the—
But Adam, that's the most difficult course at university.
So it is how we, in fact, exactly what it said in the FAQ on Wits University's site when I logged in that day. To see what is this thing called biomedical engineering. It said in the FAQ, this is probably the most crowded and most challenging course at the university. And I was obscenely aware of the fact that I was still going through this medical problem, this quagmire, this ordeal that, you know, how on earth could I possibly participate in a course like this? But through a bit of encouragement and a bit of potentially cowboying it, I mean, I thought there was no possible way I could persist through this. I accepted the offer, and the next day they actually said, you know what, we freed up a place in electrical engineering, so take your pick. And I was like, well, I've already chosen this very challenging thing. I'm going to give it a go. And I ended up getting into biomedical engineering. And I think something ignited about me in terms of the passion. And I need to rewind for a moment to a few years prior, because while I was at home and kind of outside of normal social circuiting, if you know what I mean, I was really just focused on the computer that I had at home. My dad worked in a hospital. He brought home one of his computers. I would do a little bit of work on that computer. And I ended up starting to take that computer apart, to put it back together, to break it, to install viruses, to install software, to actually writing a lot of IRC scripts. I'm sure some of the people on this call this evening will remember Merc, or IRC as it is correctly known. And I used to write lots and lots of software scripts for IRC. And I had no real formal training, but I was learning language from gaming. I was learning about logic from programming on IRC. And I was learning all these disparate skills in the realm of computing. And by the time I hit biomedical engineering, suddenly it was like, oh, all of this stuff actually makes sense. You know, there was a huge passion ignited in me for technology. And I started to get really excited about the possibilities of how we could create something from nothing. And I ended up starting biomedical engineering and persisting through it. Go for it, Howard.
So how did you do? Did you pass?
I did pass, and in my first year of biomedical engineering, I came second in the class, and I had to catch up a lot of school mathematics. And I was in awe. I mean, one of my friends who I actually studied very closely with couldn't believe that I was trying to basically split a denominator. I mean, I didn't know anything about school mathematics. It was actually absurd, but I managed to catch up through a little bit of persistence and a lot of practice, a great deal of practice. I would come home actually exhausted and crash for a few hours and then get up and play computer games into the night and do maths. So I came second in the first year, and then in all further years and into electrical engineering, I came first, and I ended up graduating with the gold medal engineering across the faculty of engineering in the built environment, having had the best marks across all the students, which was an unbelievable privilege for me, like a big turning point for me that something could be achieved, and something I was very grateful for. And it was a huge, huge honor to self-actualize in something, even though I still had all this medical stuff going on, you know.
Adam?
So I did okay.
Adam, do you
Sorry,
still
Benji.
have pain? Did you still have pain at that time, or how did you manage that without the medication? It's one.
I did, Benji. I did, and I used to really struggle. I would walk with unusual limps. I would really battle, and people would notice that I would often be battling. But the major thing for me is that I was hiding this, and I try to hide it for my whole life, actually. So most people didn't know that I was going through this. I didn't like to talk about it. In fact, Howie will know well that I used to get offended if someone even brought it up or noticed my limp. I used to get frustrated and offended. I had kind of a hidden disability that I was trying to manage. And I used to go from one side of campus to the other with a disabled sticker in my car. And then I used to hide my disabled sticker from my study group. But I would figure out ways to optimize my movement through campus using a combination. I was very fortunate to have a car, and using a combination of the car and using a combination of very uncomfortable movements, I made sure I would attend. I showed up at university and I was fully immersed in it. And I managed to get through it. So it was very tough, though, I must be honest. And coming out of it, I was still in pain. I was still struggling with my condition. And I ended up, really going through a lot of life changes coming out of university and only starting to really have a little bit of foresight that I could have a future, a little bit of insight that my life was kind of worth something. There were times that I was like completely devastated, desperate, felt completely and utterly worthless, and didn't want to have any form of a future for myself, or didn't feel that I could or that I deserved one, you know. It really took a devastating toll on me growing up in this way, and a devastating toll on my personal self-esteem, I think. But I had, an amazing support structure from a very kind family, specifically my mom. She really looked after me through. It was almost like she actually had a full-time job of dealing with an adolescent kid. I became like a baby again. I couldn't do basic things. And my mom just really was truly a saint. You can't even imagine, you know.
So Adam, you do so well out of university. Sorry, Howie. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Benj.
You do so well out of university. Did you start actually start believing in yourself? When did that start happening? That you actually, I hear that you enjoyed the self-actualization, but was there a moment where you realized that actually you're someone and you're something and you can achieve something?
So, I mean, I'm so humbled to have gotten those awards, and I was almost in disbelief, to be honest, Benji. So to be honest with you, I was still like totally down, completely not in a belief that I would have a good future. I was having some dysfunctional relationships as a result of all of this like self-loathing that was going on. And, you know, a few years later, I decided I'm going to bring an engineering approach to my own life. And I'm going to take a look at my life and start looking at, you know, maybe in a very selfish way to say, well, let me look at my life and what are the factors involved in my life that are making me unhappy or that are potentially unpleasant for me. And I started to actually document a plan which I would eventually measure and titrate and use feedback and measurements to figure out how to move forward with that plan. And I would iterate that plan. And it started off with things like a little bit of Pilates and a little bit of yoga. And it was excruciating. I mean, I was really bad at it. It was excruciating. My muscles were atrophied. I was 20 years into this. I mean, I suppose 20 years into this thing, just about. So my legs were dysfunctional, but I decided I'm going to push through and persist. And I used to bomb out, but I persisted. And then I started therapy. And then I started testing myself with high doses of certain vitamins. And then I started to meditate. And then I started to introduce mantras into my life. And then I just started to measure what was working and what was not working. And I went to gym and I started to swim. And eventually I found myself on a bike finishing the 94/7 cycle challenge, where I know that that's, you know, quite a mundane accomplishment. But for me, the base from which I started, this was an exceptional moment. And I remember my family, you know, kind of on a bridge cheering for me as I went past. And there was a lot of meaning in that. And my friend Kaya had really encouraged me to get started with cycling. And cycling turned a lot of my mental state around, because all of a sudden I could move again. Instead of being that young paralyzed boy, I was now moving down Jan Smuts Avenue at 90 kilometers per hour. You know, it was incredibly exhilarating and incredibly dangerous for me with my condition. I shouldn't be doing that. So shortly after finishing the 94.7, I ended up retiring just to like Zwift and stationary bikes. But nowadays, you can be anywhere on a bike using technology. So this is the amazing and truly remarkable thing.
So, Adam, I don't think people actually realize what you have accomplished, not just about being top of any engineering class at Wits, not just physically being able to move from being in a wheelchair and being carried to, if someone saw you today, they wouldn't really notice anything at all. But in terms of science and engineering, you've lectured medical students, you lecture biomedical engineering, you have started multiple businesses, all of them technology based. We've been in business together as well. And Adam, but some of the stuff that you've done in engineering, and maybe I just want to use an example, maybe you can explain how you turned the human brain into a computer network in a simple 1 minute explanation to people, because this was really one of the most astounding things I've ever seen.
Thanks, Howie. That's awesome of you to say. And I mean, I think I get the immense privilege of working with some of the most remarkable minds in the country who come through our programs at Wits in engineering. And what we did is well, it started off with this BrainTernet project, which was where we live streamed brain signals onto the internet using a consumer grade cheap EEG system, or an electroencephalogram, which you probably know from medical contexts. And we live streamed the brain onto the internet to share our neurology in real time with the world. It was quite poetic, actually. I would go from having a neurological disease to our team being the first people to live stream their neurology onto the internet, open sourced. And that project gave rise to a slightly different project, which is the one you mentioned, Howie, where we took a flashing light and we encoded information onto the light, basically in the way that it flashed. And then through the eyes, we were able to detect that same information in the visual cortex at the back of the brain. And we were able to allow two disconnected computers to communicate through a network through the human brain. And we believe that was also a world first. It's been the most amazing, exhilarating career to be able to every day just work on this tech, this passion that I'd found at a young age through sheer accident, and suddenly have career prospects that are truly, just truly exciting every day to be able to work on these incredible innovations that we can literally create from our neurology. We seed a thought and we go out and we build it. And that's just been the most lucky and the best thing I could have ever hoped for.
So Adam, you've gone from a kid in a wheelchair to what, 2 months ago, you became a father for the first time.
Yes.
Tell us your feelings at that moment. Is that the victory over everything at that moment when you have your own child?
Yeah, Howie, such a great insight at your age, because I absolutely think it is. It's I've got the most amazing wife anyone can imagine, the most amazing little girl. She's so beautiful, and it is a huge triumphant moment to feel that exhilaration when you have a little baby. It's just absolutely wild, it's just, there's nothing like it. So it did feel like, I did feel like it was a moment of sheer disbelief that my life had culminated in something so meaningful.
So at this moment, we're going to ask you, if you have any questions, please join us and use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask any of the panelists any questions. But Benji, I'm sure you have questions about mental strength and agility and determination that you want to pose to everyone.
Yeah. Firstly, but first to Adam, one of the parenting, you read a lot in like the parenting things, what a beautiful moment that is. But you also highlight something else, that when kids don't find school, like where they can express themselves in school, as we know, the education structures are so dimensional, single dimensional, that not every kid thrives. There's a saying, don't peak too soon. And you're an absolute shining example. It's interesting how it's interesting because being involved in endurance sport, I found the ability of the brain to make a decision about, you can be running, as Gary will know, you can be running and 1 minute you feel tired and the next minute even further you actually feel exhilarated. And a lot of that is the processing of the brain. And I'd be interested from each of the panelists, just for 1 minute, just a quick answer in that. What was that moment that you chose to thrive, or you chose? I know, Gary, you might feel like you just survived, but there was somewhere in the year afterwards that you chose to thrive. And what was the mental tip and advice you would give to these thousands of people that are watching? Just that one moment, or that process of thinking, if you had to give someone some advice. So maybe we'll start with you, Adam, because you were last.
Thanks, Benji. Well, thank you for your immensely kind words as well, Benji. I mean, I guess it's hard to pinpoint one thing. I think it is a practice. It is a series of events. But if I may take a moment, I was reflecting on a recent interview I did. I've actually, as the next iteration of this story, if I may take a moment to digress, and I'll loop back to you in a second with what you've said. But I've started a new thing where I'm seeking out people who have turned their biggest challenges into their greatest accomplishments and interviewing them. So I thought in my humble way, I have had my biggest strength come out of something that I thought was my worst disaster. And that was in discovering technology for me. And so I'm now seeking out all these amazing people who have the most ridiculous things happen in their lives. For instance, a cancer survivor who lost his leg, becoming an unbelievable dancer, Musa Mata. So this is called Shift Stream. And I've just started releasing these interviews. And I was on
So
a
in
Shift
fact,
Stream
Adam,
interview.
we are going to be posting the link right now onto the chat, and it's a link to your website where people can go and listen and watch all of these interviews that you're doing. Danny Cato is going to do that right now.
Thanks, Howie. That's awesome. And I guess this, in the process of interviewing Vivian Ming this week, you know, she said to me, this is a practice. And it reminded me of a moment in my life when I had this massive, devastating inflection point when I think I was at my lowest, and I took a video of myself for some reason that I've never really done anything with or shared, because it was such like a devastating low point in my life. And I just realized, observing that this is myself, that I don't want to do this anymore, and I can choose not to. And as soon as I realized that, I could stop hitting my head against a wall and say, hey, that doesn't really hurt so much anymore. And I think that moment set me on a course of deciding to choose better daily, and self-improving and self-reflecting, and trying to just be, you know, a better person, and to try to channel my anger more positively, and reduce harm out there, and try to just be good. And I guess that was the moment for me.
Fantastic. Gary, in that year, post surviving, a little bit of whatever you were feeling, what were the decisions that you made? What can you share with us that people can reflect on?
The interesting one is, I mean, it's a very interesting question, Benjamin. And during post the event, while suffering through the pain, etc., it was quite easy to be quite philosophical about everything, because I had the pain and the scars and all of this, and to try and use these things as being positive. The harder part was after the fact, when all of that was over, and a sense of, you know, normality to some degree returns, albeit quite a while later, for then to still try and maintain, you know, these positive things, you know, like I got a new lease on life, so therefore I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But like that then it fades away, and to try and then find other sources of inspiration or that was tough, and there was no light switch. It was just I think just a good old-fashioned grind of life, and trying to find pockets of inspiration in different places. As I mentioned before, I definitely found one in some mountain climbing, which became a great passion of mine. And yeah, but there was no one thing. I wish we knew what it was.
It's just a bit of hard work and just the right decisions over and over again.
Yeah, and I think being around the right people, that has a huge, being surrounded by the right people that have the right energy. That's a big piece. That helps a lot. Community and family and friends. Yeah, that gets you to the right place.
It's incredible. We had a psychologist who spoke to our work recently to the employees, and he said you need to make a decision all the time. Like, is this an act, a positive act or a negative act? But the good news is that you can make a negative act, but every second you can make the next choice to make a positive act. And he's saying that it's like a series of just giving you like permission if you make the wrong act, and then allowing yourself for the next second to make
incremental.
The right act.
Yeah.
And did you find that was the process post?
Yeah, it was a day by day. It was a long journey. It was over a year to get, because it was same thing. I mean, Adam, a lot of stuff Adam spoke about resonates. I feel when you've got chronic pain, it's one of the worst, the most debilitating things in the world. I actually remember I had this debilitating pain in my foot, and at one stage also I thought, cut my foot off, take it away. Like if that gets rid of it, it's fine. So that consumed for so long. So that was one phase, and then the next phase of trying to walk and then run and so on. So they just, as you say, they small incremental pieces that and when you achieve a little one, you feel 100 times better. And I suppose it's just keep going.
Yeah, we're being asked by a number of our audience about your family now. You had just got married. What does it look like now?
So thank God I got my wife. I've got two beautiful kids. I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And very, very, very
Beautiful.
blessed. Thank God.
May they be blessed. May they be blessed.
Amen.
Shani, we're being asked, were you visited by some rabbis when you were in the jail?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say to Gary that Rabbi Cantor, who visited him and took care of him, was a very good friend of mine. And in the 18 years that he visited me, I think he had 8 children in that time. And he used to come to me every Rosh Hashanah and ask me for some words of inspiration that he would then relay to his congregation. So we actually had quite an incredible friendship.
Yeah, amazing guy.
A great guy. Yeah, I used to come into the prison and get all the Jewish guys together, bring us matzah, send us challah on Fridays in a parcel, and twice a year he'd come there and we'd put on tefillin. So yeah, huge respect. And you just reminded me of him. Sometimes we forget the little blessings.
Yeah, the small details, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Shani, Kathy Sher asks, she says, Shani, thanks for the most amazing story. What happened with your amazing painting of the Rebbe?
So actually I sold that to, what's his name? The rabbi here at Chabad, Rabbi Mazinta. It's a funny story because he took it to some people to frame, and these very same people were doing prints for me of the rabbi before I sold it. So when I got there, and the Rabbi Mazinta forgot about it, and they said, "Listen, we still got the original of your of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson." So I said, "That's weird because I actually sold it, but show it to me." And they showed it to me. So I took it back, and then I phoned the rabbi and I said to him, "Rabbi, what happened to that painting you bought from me?" He says, "I don't know, I think it's at the Framers." So I said, "No, it's actually with me." So I returned it to him. So great story there as well. That's with Rabbi Mazinta.
Just Bruce Singer says, Adam, amazing story. Are you completely recovered? I can relate to your story. I had polio and persevered just like you.
Sure. Well, congratulations, Bruce. And I'm sorry to hear that you had polio, but well done on recovering. And for me, I am certainly not fully recovered. I would say I have very challenging days, but there were moments in my past which I always work back toward, where I went through a series of time where I was functionally pain-free. I was stronger than ever at gym. I was doing some ridiculous things at gym. And that is kind of my North Star, to keep getting back to that. You know, the doctors say I should have no use of my hands. As Howie said, I was destined to be in a wheelchair. I actually thought I'd be, when I was up and running, you know, my teenage years, I was certain I'd be in a wheelchair by 20. Like 20 was such a distant thing for me that I was like, 20, that's when it's happening. You know, and then it was like 24, that sounds like the time when, you know, it's going to happen. And it just kept deferring. And actually, instead of getting worse, which is what should be happening, I ended up just repeatedly getting better and improving. And, you know, it's mystified the doctors a little bit. And I believe it's all linked to the work that I did internally in, you know, in developing my mind and my resilience against the condition, and working with it and really accepting it through a lot of different amazing practitioners who supported me, and a lot of work that I did on myself, which took a lot of time and effort, I think. But thanks for the question.
We would love, just as we ask our last few questions of the panel, we'd love to know what people actually think of tonight, whether tonight was inspiring, whether it was enlightening, whether you enjoyed. So please take to the chat section. We'd love to actually hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments. If you have any messages for any of the people on the panel, we'd love to hear that as well. So please take this time and actually post some comments to them in the panel below, or next year.
We've got a question here, which from Robin, who says, "What was the most difficult thing to contend with concerning fellow inmates, and what kind of communication did you have with family and friends at that time?"
So it's very difficult with the fellow inmates, in that you're in a confined space and you see each other every day, and the different cultures, the different levels of education. So one thing that it taught me was a lot of patience, you know, and to try and understand how other people were. And in the beginning of my imprisonment, I tried to enforce my own principles on the inmates, because like I was the room chief, and there were certain ways I would do things. And I then eventually started making a lot of enemies. And I learned that the only way that I can change somebody is by maybe changing my own attitude. So also because it was so overcrowded, and I mean, tempers would flare. There was a lot of stuff going on, you know, so I learned actually to be quite diplomatic. Initially, the only contact I had with the outside world was through letter writing. And early into my confinement, I started petitioning the prison authorities to install telephones. It took me 10 years to get telephones in, and then we were allowed 2 5-minute calls with our families. And otherwise, I had a visitor who used to come to me and bring me emails and from our family.
So maybe I could just ask, because we've spoken about mental perseverance, mental resilience, and many people at this point in time during lockdown are experiencing great stress and trauma because they've been confined. I mean, Shani, I'd love to hear from you, but I'd love to hear from everyone as well. Yeah. You know, how are you coping with lockdown? Is this almost reminiscent of something that you went through? What's keeping you mentally strong? And Gary and Adam, if I could pose that question to you as well. How are you coping with all of this? What advice would you give the people who are busy watching about those decisions to be strong? There is a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll get there. It's just about taking care, taking the right precautions, being a little patient, mudding through until we get to the light at the end. But Shani, let's start with you. Is this reminiscent to you of what you went through in some way?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I just felt once again I was restricted and confined to a life of deprivation without any contact, alone behind closed doors. So a lot of those emotions I suppressed of those nightmarish years in prison, where one existed in a state of total uncertainty, suddenly started to resurface. But the way I got through prison was to structure my day. So I would still get up at my normal time, which is 5:30 in the morning, do whatever I had to do, and then being creative. So I did my art. I would still defy the lockdown by going for walks. I mean, people used to look at me very strangely, but I just couldn't stay locked up like that. But I think for me, the most important lesson I've learned is that the hardest prison to escape is the prison of the mind. If I may end it on that. But again, often people say to me, so how's lockdown? So I tell them, well, it's like prison in luxury, you know. So it hasn't really affected me in that way, but it was hard because, you know, I was cut off from my family, and but still we could still go out. So, and I think for a lot of people that they weren't earning, so that was also difficult, you know. So I also had to start being more creative, paint pictures that were more affordable, and I've been very blessed in that I have been selling some of my paintings, you know.
Amazing. Gary, from you?
Yeah, Howie, my lockdown scenario, it does take me a little bit back down to the time of the tsunami, because at that same time of the tsunami, I had my wife and my rock looking after me through that year. And we got right into lockdown, and I was stuck in isolation. And there was my wife outside my study looking after me like the years gone by. So thank God, it's all about a strong structure and family and love around. And yeah, we just we got through it together. Fortunately, we were fortunate as a family, and that helped a lot to get through it.
Amazing. Adam, the last word goes to you.
Thanks, Howie. I mean, I think I've got so much to say on the specific topic, because I'm so grateful to be here and to hear the other guys' stories. And it resonates with me that you created this, because during lockdown, I felt that people are really suffering out there. People have had horrific times and horrific challenges. And I wanted to create something to try and tell stories similarly, which would uplift them. And so to me, that has been a major outlet for me. And I want to just share with you on a very personal note that since I had this condition and I was in bed for that amount of time, I ended up later, when I was no longer physically paralyzed, seeing paralysis manifest in different ways in my life. It would come up in an inability to do my admin, to do taxation. It would come up in relationships or in other aspects of my life. And until I recognized this pattern, I was not free of it. And so it's so interesting for me that, I mean, I'm obviously very lucky to be able to work, and I count my blessings that during this lockdown time I am able to, but I have ultimate freedom through technology. So I haven't felt that lockdown is stifling me much, to be honest. I felt quite free in this time. I'm a bit of an introvert, so it probably suits my mental state well, but I think things like meditation are so powerful to help shift you from a constrained and confined mental state into one of feeling totally free. And I just wish everyone, you know, a really easy time through this, to move through this really challenging time with ease. And I hope that everyone can move forward through it in that same gentle way. And thank you so much.
Adam, just remind us again your website where people can go see these interviews that you're doing with other people who've overcome their challenges. Remind us of that website name again, please.
Thanks, Howie. So you just type into your browser shift, shift.stream, stream, shift.stream.
Thanks, Adam. Benji, what a remarkable evening this evening. Aren't those truly some of the most inspirational stories you've ever heard?
Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable. And on Rosh Chodesh Elul, as we build up to Rosh Hashanah, you know, we need inspiration for a new beginning and a new, you know, we believe deeply that the Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year, and you guys have just absolutely inspired us each with such deep and inspiring lessons. We're so grateful to you that you made the time, and it was remarkable, Howie. I could listen to all of you the whole evening. Thank you so much.
Howie, thank you. Thanks for putting this on, and Benji and Howie for this incredible webinars that you put together that I think are just amazing and brought the community together. So shkach to you guys. Thank you.
Well, I think if the three of you want to understand that the impact you've had on literally thousands and thousands of people, and we'll get the final numbers tomorrow, but it looks like at least 3,500, 4,000 people have watched tonight. But if you want to understand the impact, we will share with you the hundreds and hundreds of comments that have come in from the people who've actually been watching. And I think you will understand the impact that you've had on everyone out there. These are trying, difficult times, but to listen to people who've been through far, far worse. All we're being asked to do is to stay home, to wear a mask, to sanitize. And when we hear your stories, it's really hard to feel a little sorry for ourselves. But I want to thank all three of you. This has been the most remarkable inspirational evening of perseverance and resilience and strength. And I think we can learn so much from all three of you. So a huge thank you to the most amazing panel. Benji Porter, thank you for sharing the evening with me. To Danny Kedar,
great honor.
Massive thanks for working all the buttons behind the scenes. Just a reminder, the latest Juice report is out. Please go get a copy or go to www.sajr.co.za. You can either download the full edition or look at all the stories individually. Reminder, nominations for Juice Achiever Awards close 5 p.m. tomorrow. There are no exceptions. And you go nominate on www.jaa2020.co.za. That's JAA for Juice Achiever Awards 2020.co.za. We'll see you all again on Saturday evening when we have 12 remarkable speakers in one evening, where you are going to complain because we're giving you so much choice. You will be unable to hear and see everything. But that's part of the beauty of what we're going to do. We're going to give you such amazing talent that you're going to be so upset that you won't see absolutely everyone. So with that, Benji, you have one last word.
No, just remember to send in your chauffeur blowing.
Oh, of course, please.
Don't forget. All three of you, we expect your attempts, eh?
Webinars at sajuicereport.co.za. We want to see your chauffeur blowing. Benji and I have
We've got a bet.
a bottle of whiskey.
I look forward to winning it.
And I have full faith in my nominee there.
My contestant's going to win it.
We can't use the irony of a call to blow the chauffeur. Like it's just crazy irony, right?
Crazy irony. We're going to leave the chat open for about 5 minutes. Danny Kedar is going to put up just the poster reminder for people of where they can register for Saturday night's event. We'll see you all again on Saturday evening. Thank you for spending the evening with us. I know it's a freezing cold evening in both Johannesburg and Cape Town. I hope the people in Durban are much better. I know they had lots of people from the United States and Canada and Europe watching this evening. I hope you're having better weather than us. We know the people in Tel Aviv told us they were sweltering. But we hope you have a good night. We'll see you again on Saturday. Thank you all so much. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Thanks all.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks all. Thanks so much.
Bye. I've stopped it. You see?
No, you haven't. Leave.
No. Okay.